Marcus Hale held the cream-colored invitation in his hands, his thumb tracing the gold-embossed letters spelling out his wedding to Sloane Whitmore. Heiress, beauty, vindication. But it was the extra envelope that made his pulse quicken. Inside, Lena Park's name sat in perfect calligraphy, a ghost he was deliberately summoning to witness his triumph. She'd left him when he had nothing. Now he had everything, and he wanted her to see it, to feel the weight of her mistake crushing down on her shoulders like concrete. Revenge dressed in wedding whites. This wasn't just an invitation, it was a reckoning. If you're ready to see how the perfect revenge plan can backfire in the most devastating way, stay with me until the end. And don't forget to hit that like button and drop a comment telling me what city you're watching from. I want to see just how far this story travels. The San Francisco skyline glittered through the floor-to-ceiling windows of Marcus Hale's penthouse office, a vista of glass and ambition that stretched toward the bay. He stood with his back to the view, eyes fixed on the leather portfolio spread across his mahogany desk. Wedding invitations. 247 of them, each one a small masterpiece of ivory cardstock and gold foil, announcing the union of Marcus Hale and Sloane Whitmore at the Whitmore estate in Napa Valley. 247 guests who would witness his arrival. But it was number 248 that held his attention now. "You're sure about this?" The question came from Jordan Chen, his best man and CFO, who sat in one of the modernist chairs across from Marcus's desk. Jordan's suit probably cost more than Marcus used to make in a month, back in the before times. The times neither of them liked to discuss. Marcus picked up the extra invitation, feeling its weight. Premium paper. Expensive. Everything about this wedding screamed money, and that was precisely the point. "I'm sure," Marcus said. "Sloane knows?" "It was her idea." Jordan's eyebrows rose. "Really? Really?" Marcus set the invitation down, smoothing it flat with careful fingers. "She said if we're going to do this, we should do it right. No shadows, no unfinished business. Lena should see exactly what she walked away from." "That's cold." Jordan didn't sound disapproving. If anything, there was a note of admiration in his voice. Marcus shrugged. "It's honest. 7 years ago, Lena Park looked me in the eye and said I'd never amount to anything, that my dreams were just fantasies, that she couldn't build a life with a man who had nothing but ambition and student debt." His jaw tightened at the memory. "She filed for divorce 3 months before I got the first round of funding for Halo Tech. 3 months. If she'd just waited, just believed in me." "But she didn't," Jordan finished. "And now you're marrying a woman whose family trust fund has more zeros than most people see. Once in a lifetime. Your company just got valued at $2 billion, and you're living in a penthouse that appeared in Architectural Digest last month. I'd say you won." Marcus nodded slowly. "Yeah, I did. And I want her to know it." The invitation sat between them like a loaded gun. "What's her address these days?" Jordan asked. "I heard she moved after the divorce." "She did." Marcus pulled up his phone, scrolled to a note he'd saved. "Some building in Pacific Heights, probably a studio apartment. She was working as a paralegal when we split. Maybe she's still grinding away at someone else's law firm, making $45,000 a year and telling herself she made the right choice." Jordan stood, straightening his tie. "Want me to have my assistant mail it?" "No." Marcus picked up the invitation again, sliding it into its envelope. "I'll handle this one personally. I want to make sure it gets there." After Jordan left, Marcus sat alone in his office as the sun began its descent toward the Pacific. The city below was waking up to Friday night, restaurants filling, bars opening, people moving through their small lives with small dreams. He'd been one of them once, riding the bus because he couldn't afford parking, eating ramen for the 4th night in a row, coming home to a cramped apartment where Lena would be waiting with that look on her face, the one that said she was disappointed but trying to hide it. He remembered their last real conversation, the one before lawyers got involved. They'd been sitting in that apartment's excuse for a living room, takeout containers from the cheap Thai place scattered across the coffee table. Lena had come home late from work, again, and Marcus had been coding since morning, fueled by coffee and the absolute certainty that Halo Tech's prototype was going to change everything. "I can't do this anymore," Lena had said. Marcus hadn't looked up from his laptop. "Do what?" "This. Us. The waiting. The hoping. Marcus, you've been working on this app for 3 years. 3 years of just wait, it's almost ready. We're so close. I'm 28 years old and I'm living like a college student. That had made him look up. I'm building something. You know that. You've always known that. No, you're chasing something. Lena's voice had been tired, not angry. That was worse somehow. And I don't think you're ever going to catch it. I think you're going to wake up at 45, still in this apartment, still telling yourself that success is right around the corner. I have meetings next month with 3 different VC firms. You've had meetings before. They always say no. This time is different. It's never different, Marcus. She'd stood then, started clearing the takeout containers with sharp, decisive movements. I love you. I really do. But I can't build a life on maybes. I can't plan a future with someone who won't even acknowledge reality. Reality? He'd closed his laptop, stood to face her. Reality is that technology is changing the world every single day. Reality is that the right idea at the right time can transform everything. Reality is that I am good enough and smart enough to make this happen. Then prove it. Lena had stopped moving, met his eyes. But prove it without me. Because I can't wait anymore. I can't sacrifice anymore. I need stability. I need a partner who comes home at reasonable hours and doesn't spend every penny we have on server costs and patent applications. I need a real life, not a potential one. The divorce papers had arrived 2 weeks later. Now, Marcus looked down at the invitation in his hands and felt a surge of something hot and satisfied in his chest. Vindication. Sweet and sharp as good whiskey. He'd proved it. Without her. The Whitmore estate was everything the cramped apartment hadn't been. Sprawling. Elegant. Old money rendered in stone and vineyards. Sloane had grown up there, taking for granted the kind of wealth that Marcus had spent his entire youth dreaming about. When he'd first met her at a tech conference 18 months ago, he'd been struck by how naturally she wore her privilege, not flaunting it, just assuming it as the baseline of existence. She'd approached him after his panel on emerging markets, hand extended, smile confident. Marcus Hale, I've been following Halo Tech's development. Impressive metrics. Thank you, Miss Whitmore, Sloane Whitmore. My family has some venture interests. I'd love to buy you a drink and talk about your scaling strategy. That drink had turned into dinner. Dinner had turned into a weekend in Napa. Within 6 months, they were inseparable. She understood his drive because she'd grown up around it. Her father had built his fortune in commercial real estate. Her mother came from banking money. Ambition wasn't threatening to Sloane. It was familiar. Expected. When Marcus had proposed, overlooking the estate's vineyard at sunset, Sloane had said yes before he'd finished the question. But we do this right, she'd added, kissing him. None of that modest courthouse nonsense. If we're getting married, the world should know about it. Marcus had laughed. You want a big wedding? I want a legendary wedding. I want people to talk about it for years. And Marcus, she'd pulled back to look at him seriously. I want everyone who ever doubted you to see exactly what you've become, including your ex-wife. He'd been surprised. Lena? Why? Because closure is important, because unfinished business festers, and because... Sloane had smiled, cat-like. I want her to see what she lost. I want her to understand that she gave up on you right before you became extraordinary. That's not cruelty. That's just truth. Marcus had kissed her then, feeling something in his chest unlock. This was a woman who understood, who valued what he'd built, who would never ask him to shrink himself down to fit in a smaller life. Now, standing in his office with Lena's invitation ready to mail, Marcus felt certain he was doing the right thing. This wasn't about revenge, not really. It was about completion, about showing the woman who'd walked away that her lack of faith had been catastrophically misplaced. He'd address it himself, put it in the mail personally, make sure it arrived. His phone buzzed. Sloane, can't wait to see you tonight. Dinner at Atelier, 8 p.m.? Marcus smiled, typing back, perfect. Love you. Love you more, future husband. He pocketed his phone, grabbed his jacket, and picked up Lena's invitation. The mailroom was on the ground floor of his building. He'd drop it off on his way out. 20 minutes later, Marcus stood in front of the blue USPS mailbox on the corner, invitation in hand. The evening air was cool, typical San Francisco summer, and the street was busy with the Friday night crowd. People moved past him, caught up in their own dramas, their own small victories and defeats. He looked down at the envelope one last time. Ms. Lena Park. The Vanguard Building. 2847 Pacific Avenue, San Francisco, CA 94115, the Vanguard Building. Marcus vaguely recognized the name. Some historic apartment complex in Pacific Heights. Probably rent-controlled. Probably small. The image of Lena in a cramped studio, eating takeout alone, watching Netflix on a second-hand TV, filled him with a complicated satisfaction. He dropped the invitation in the slot. The metallic clang felt final. 3 weeks later, Marcus sat in the estate's library with Sloane. Reviewing seating charts. The wedding was 4 days away, and the final details were falling into place with the precision of a military operation. Sloane's wedding planner, an intimidatingly efficient woman named Patricia, had everything organized down to the minute. Your college roommate and his wife at table 7, Sloane said, making a note on her iPad. Jordan and his fiancée at the head table, obviously. My cousins from Boston at table 12. She scrolled, tapped, adjusted. Oh, did Lena respond? Marcus had been wondering the same thing. The RSVP deadline had passed 3 days ago, and he'd checked the returns obsessively. Nothing from Lena Park. No, he admitted. I guess she's not coming. Sloane looked up, frowning. That's disappointing. I was looking forward to meeting her. Maybe she moved, or maybe she just... Marcus shrugged. Maybe she couldn't face it. The coward's way out. Sloane set down her iPad. Though I suppose I can't blame her. If I'd given up on you and then watched you become this... She gestured at him, at the estate around them, at everything they represented together. I'd probably hide too. Marcus laughed, but it felt hollow. Part of him had wanted Lena to come, had needed her to see. Now he felt cheated of his moment, like the punchline to a 3-year setup had been cut from the script. Well, Sloane said, picking up her iPad again. Her loss. We'll have a perfect day regardless. They would. Marcus knew they would. The weather forecast was flawless. The caterer was Michelin-starred. The string quartet had played at European royal weddings. Every detail was locked in. But that night, alone in his penthouse while Sloane handled last-minute family obligations at the estate, Marcus found himself thinking about Lena anyway. About their wedding, his first wedding, which had been nothing like this. City Hall. 20 guests. Lena in a simple dress from Nordstrom. Dinner afterward at an Italian restaurant where the wine came in carafes and the tablecloths were plastic. He'd been happy that day. Genuinely, uncomplicated happy. Lena had smiled at him like he'd hung the moon, and for a few hours the pressure to succeed, to prove himself, to become someone had lifted. He'd just been Marcus. Just been enough. When had that stopped being true? He shook off the thought. Nostalgia was a liar. That happiness had been built on sand, on Lena's temporary willingness to ignore reality. Once the money ran out, and the credit cards maxed, and the student loan payments came due, that smile had faded, replaced by worry, by disappointment, by the look that said she'd made a mistake. No. This wedding, his marriage to Sloane, was built on something solid, built on achievement, on mutual understanding, on a foundation that wouldn't crack the first time things got difficult. His phone rang. Unknown number. Marcus almost didn't answer, but something made him pick up. Hello? Mr. Hale? The voice was male, professional, unfamiliar. This is David Reeves from Chronicle Luxury Properties. I'm calling regarding the RSVP you sent to one of our residents. Marcus sat up straighter. I'm sorry, what? We manage the Vanguard building in Pacific Heights. One of our penthouse residents received a wedding invitation from you, and I wanted to confirm the details before we submitted the response. Penthouse? Marcus's mind stuttered. I think there's been a mistake. The invitation was for Lena Park. Yes, sir. Mrs. Valenti received it. Mrs. Valenti? I'm sorry. Who? Mrs. Lena Valenti. She and her husband occupy the building's top floor. They asked me to RSVP on their behalf. 2 guests, confirmed attendance. I have the dietary restrictions here if you'd like me to email them to your wedding coordinator. Marcus felt like the floor had dropped out from under him. Lena is married? A pause. Yes, sir, for about 4 years now, to Mr. Nico Valenti. Is there a problem with the invitation? No, no problem. Marcus's voice sounded distant to his own ears. Email the information, thank you. He hung up, sat in silence. Lena was married, to someone named Nico Valenti, living in a penthouse in Pacific Heights. Marcus grabbed his laptop, opened it with shaking hands, and typed the name into Google. The search results loaded, and the world tilted. Nico Valenti, Valenti Capital Group, Forbes. Profile Marcus clicked. The article was from 6 months ago, a profile piece about rising power players in private equity. The photograph showed a man in his early 40s, dark hair going silver at the temples, sharp suit, sharper eyes. Handsome in that dangerous continental way that made Marcus think of Italian sports cars in Monaco. The text was worse. Nico Valenti, founder and CEO of Valenti Capital Group, has quietly built one of the most formidable investment firms on the West Coast. With a portfolio spanning technology, real estate, and sustainable energy, Valenti's net worth is estimated at $3.2 billion. Known for his discretion and his devastating deal-making ability, Valenti rarely grants interviews and maintains a strictly private personal life. Sources close to the financier describe him as brilliant, ruthless when necessary, and unfailingly loyal to his inner circle. $3.2 billion. Marcus scrolled down. There was another photo, a rare candid shot from some charity gala. Nico Valenti in a tuxedo, and beside him, elegant in a black gown, her hand on his arm, her smile serene and knowing. Lena. His Lena. Except she wasn't his anymore. Hadn't been for 7 years, and judging by the photograph, she hadn't spent those years struggling in a studio apartment eating ramen. She'd spent them becoming this. Marcus stared at the image until his eyes burned. Lena looked different. Older, yes, but that wasn't it. She looked polished, confident. She wore the kind of dress that didn't come off a rack, and diamonds that weren't cubic zirconia glittered at her throat and ears. Her hair was styled in a way that probably required a professional. Her posture was perfect. She looked like she belonged next to a billionaire. She looked like someone who'd never doubted herself for a single day. Marcus kept searching. Found more articles, more photos. Nico Valenti at tech conferences. Nico Valenti closing deals. Nico Valenti sitting on the boards of 3 major companies and 2 charitable foundations. And sometimes, rarely, Lena beside him. Never the focus. Always slightly out of frame. But there, present. Part of his world. Marcus found one more article, this one from a business journal. Valenti Capital Group's investment strategy is notoriously opaque, with the firm operating through a network of shell companies and silent partnerships. Industry insiders believe VCG has positions in at least 40 major startups, though Valenti himself refuses to confirm or deny specific holdings. We invest in potential, Valenti said in a rare comment, and we protect our portfolio companies by staying out of the spotlight. 40 startups. Silent partnerships. A terrible thought formed in Marcus's mind. Impossible. Ridiculous. But once it took root, he couldn't shake it. He opened Halotech's corporate documents, scrolled through the list of investors from the Series A funding round 5 years ago. Most were familiar, big-name VC firms, angel investors he'd pitched directly. But there were a few shell companies he'd never thought much about. Standard practice. Investors who wanted exposure without publicity. One name stood out now that hadn't before. Meridian Holdings, LLC. Marcus searched for it, found almost nothing. Just a Delaware corporation with no public website, no listed officers, no press releases. He went deeper, digging through filing records, cross-referencing business registries. And there it was, buried in a footnote on page 47 of a quarterly report from Valenti Capital Group. Portfolio companies held through affiliated entities including Meridian Holdings, LLC. No. Marcus's hands were shaking. He pulled up Halotech's full cap table, the document that showed every investor's stake. Meridian Holdings owned 8% of his company. Not huge, but not insignificant either. At the current valuation, that 8% was worth, Marcus did the math, $160 million. $160 million that Lena, that Lena and her billionaire husband owned of his company, of the success he'd built, of the future he'd created without her. Except he hadn't created it without her. She'd been there all along, in the shadows, silent, watching, funding him. Marcus stood up so fast his chair rolled backward and hit the wall. He paced his penthouse, mind racing. This couldn't be right. Lena had left him, had told him he'd never succeed, had filed for divorce. Why would she then turn around and invest in his company? Unless it wasn't about him at all. Unless it was just business. Smart money going where smart money goes. Or unless there was something else. Something he didn't understand. Marcus looked at the wedding invitation layout still open on his desk. 4 days away. The perfect revenge, the ultimate vindication. Except the woman he'd invited to Humiliate wasn't who he thought she was. She was married to a man who could buy and sell Marcus's entire company without feeling it. She owned a piece of his success. And she was coming to his wedding. Marcus grabbed his phone, called Jordan. "Hey man, what's up?" "Did you know Lena was married?" Marcus heard the edge in his own voice. "What? No, how would I know that? Did you know she married Nico Valenti?" Silence. Then, the Nico Valenti? Valenti Capital? Yes. Holy shit! Jordan sounded genuinely shocked. "How did you find out?" "Her RSVP came through. She's coming to the wedding. With her husband." "Marcus, they own part of Halotech through Meridian Holdings, 8%. The silence stretched longer this time. When Jordan spoke again, his voice was careful. "Are you sure? I'm looking at the documents right now." Okay, let's think about this logically. Valenti Capital invests in hundreds of companies. Lena probably doesn't even know. She probably just married rich and doesn't pay attention to where his money goes." But Marcus was already shaking his head, even though Jordan couldn't see it. "No, she knows. She has to know. Why else would she RSVP yes? Why would she come? Maybe she's over it. Maybe she just wants to wish you well." Nobody wishes their ex-husband well by showing up to his wedding with a billionaire. Jordan didn't have an answer for that. "I have to tell Sloane," Marcus said. "Tell her what?" "That Lena is coming with her husband, that she's—" He laughed, a sharp bark of sound. "That she's richer than we are, that this whole thing is what?" Marcus looked around his penthouse. At the view he'd worked so hard to earn, at the life he'd built, at the wedding 4 days away that was supposed to prove something. "I don't know," he admitted. He called Sloane, told her everything. She listened without interrupting, and when he finished, she was quiet for a long moment. "Well," she said finally, this is interesting." "Interesting?" "Marcus, darling, she still said yes. That's the important part. She's still coming. Whether she's married to a billionaire or a barista, she's still going to walk into our wedding and see us together. See what we've built. That doesn't change. But the point was closure, and we'll get it. Actually, this is better. If she'd shown up alone and struggling, people might have pitied her, might have thought we were being cruel. But if she shows up on the arm of Nico Valenti," Sloane's voice was warming to the idea, "then it's just two successful couples celebrating. No awkwardness, no drama, just a clean ending to an old chapter." Marcus wanted to believe her, wanted to see it that way, but he couldn't shake the feeling that he'd miscalculated something fundamental, that the trap he'd set was somehow going to spring in the wrong direction. "Trust me," Sloane said, "this wedding is going to be perfect, and when it's over, you'll finally be free of Lena Park, or Lena Valenti, or whoever she is now. Free to move forward with me, with our life. Isn't that what you wanted?" It was. Of course it was. So why did Marcus feel like he'd just made a terrible mistake? The next 3 days passed in a blur of final preparations and mounting anxiety that Marcus couldn't quite name. He went through the motions: final tuxedo fitting, rehearsal dinner, last-minute calls with the caterer, but his mind kept circling back to that Forbes article, to the image of Lena in diamonds, to the number $3.2 billion. The rehearsal dinner was held at the estate's private dining room, a space that could comfortably seat 40 beneath crystal chandeliers and oil paintings of Sloane's ancestors. The Whitmores had occupied this land for 3 generations, and they weren't shy about displaying that legacy. Marcus's parents sat near the end of the table, looking slightly overwhelmed by the silverware options, while Sloane's mother held court at the head, gesturing with a wine glass that probably cost more than Marcus's first car. "A toast," Sloane's father announced, standing. Gerald Whitmore was a broad-shouldered man in his 60s, with the kind of presence that came from never having heard the word no in any meaningful context. "To my daughter and her brilliant husband-to-be, Marcus, you've proven yourself to be exactly the kind of man this family values, driven, intelligent, and unafraid to build something from nothing. Tomorrow, you become a Whitmore, and that's no small thing." Everyone raised their glasses. Marcus smiled, nodded, drank. The wine was exceptional. Everything here was exceptional. So why did he feel like he was standing on ice that was slowly cracking beneath his feet? After dinner, while Sloane was pulled aside by her bridesmaids for some last-minute dress emergency, Jordan found Marcus on the terrace overlooking the vineyard. "You good?" Jordan asked, offering him a cigar from a leather case. Marcus waved it off. "Yeah, just thinking. About her." It wasn't a question. Marcus didn't bother denying it. "I looked up Nico Valenti. Really looked him up. Jordan, the guy doesn't just have money. He has power. Real power. The kind that makes people nervous. There are articles about deals he's killed, companies he's dismantled. One journalist called him the most dangerous man in private equity." Jordan lit his cigar, the flame briefly illuminating his face. "And Lena married him. 4 years ago, right around the time Meridian Holdings invested in Halo Tech." Marcus gripped the terrace railing. What if it wasn't a coincidence? What if she specifically told him to invest in my company? Why would she do that? I don't know. Guilt? Pity? Some kind of twisted insurance policy? Marcus turned to face his friend. Or maybe she knew. Maybe she knew the whole time that Halo Tech was going to succeed, and she wanted a piece of it. Maybe that's why she divorced me, so she could invest without any conflict of interest. Jordan exhaled smoke slowly. "Marcus, listen to yourself. You sound paranoid." "Do I? She owns 8% of my company. She's married to a man who could buy and sell me 10 times over. And she's coming to my wedding. Tell me that's normal." "It's not normal," Jordan admitted, "but it's also not necessarily sinister. Maybe Valenti's people did standard market research, saw Halo Tech's potential, and invested. Lena might not have even known until later. Then why come to the wedding?" Jordan didn't have an answer for that. They stood in silence, the valley stretching out below them in the darkness, dotted with lights from distant houses. Somewhere in that darkness, people were living simple lives, uncomplicated lives. Marcus envied them. "You could uninvite them," Jordan said finally. "Blame it on a seating chart error. No room, whatever." Marcus had thought about it, had actually drafted the email twice before deleting it, but something stopped him each time. Some stubborn part of him that still needed to see her, still needed to understand how the woman who'd told him he'd never amount to anything had ended up funding his success. "No," he said, "let them come. I want to look Lena in the eye and ask her why." "At your wedding reception? In front of 247 guests? If that's what it takes." Jordan studied him for a long moment. "Just don't do anything that'll end up on social media. Sloane's family has a reputation to protect." Marcus laughed, but it sounded bitter even to his own ears. "Don't worry, I'll be the perfect groom. Gracious, magnanimous, everything a Whitmore should be." The wedding day dawned clear and perfect, the kind of Northern California summer day that felt personally designed for outdoor ceremonies. Marcus woke at 6 in one of the estate's guest cottages, alone per tradition, and immediately checked his phone for messages he knew wouldn't be there. What was he hoping for? A text from Lena saying she wasn't coming after all? An explanation? An apology? Nothing. Just a message from Sloane, sent at midnight. "Can't sleep, too excited. Tomorrow you're mine forever." Marcus showered, shaved, and let the morning pass in a haze of preparation. His groomsmen arrived at 9, boisterous and already slightly drunk despite the early hour. They told jokes, shared flasks, helped him into his custom Tom Ford tuxedo while making the kind of crude comments that were apparently mandatory at these events. Marcus played along, smiled at the right moments, accepted the flask when it was offered, but his mind was elsewhere. At noon, Jordan knocked on the door of the dressing room. "They're starting to arrive," he said. Guests, you ready for this? Marcus adjusted his bow tie one last time. As ready as I'll ever be. For what it's worth, you look good. Like a man who's about to marry the woman of his dreams and live happily ever after. That's the plan. Is it? Jordan's voice was gentle. Because from where I'm standing, you look like a man about to face a firing squad. Marcus met his friend's eyes in the mirror. What do you want me to say? I want you to say this is what you want. That Sloane is what you want. That this whole thing isn't just about proving something to a woman who stopped caring about you 7 years ago. The words hung in the air between them like smoke. I love Sloane, Marcus said. And he meant it. He did love her. She was brilliant and beautiful, and she understood his world in a way Lena never had. She pushed him to be better, to aim higher, to never settle. She was perfect. I know you do, Jordan said. I just hope you love her for the right reasons. Before Marcus could respond, there was a knock at the door. One of Sloane's cousins, a blonde woman named Ainsley, who'd appointed herself an unofficial wedding coordinator. 15 minutes, she announced. Most of the guests are seated. It's gorgeous out there, Marcus. You're going to die when you see what they did with the roses. Marcus nodded. Thanks. Ainsley left. Jordan clapped him on the shoulder. Last chance to run, Jordan said, only half joking. I'm not running. I'm done running. They made their way through the estate's gardens toward the ceremony site, a stone terrace overlooking the vineyard where 200 white chairs sat in perfect rows. The setup was breathtaking. Rose-covered arches, silk ribbons rippling in the breeze, a string quartet playing something classical and elegant. The guest list was already 90% seated, a sea of designer dresses and expensive suits, everyone who mattered in Marcus's new world. He scanned the crowd reflexively, looking for her. And there, 5 rows back, aisle seat, Lena. Marcus's breath caught. She wore a dress the color of champagne, simple but clearly expensive, that draped her frame in ways that suggested a designer he couldn't afford even now. Her hair was pinned up in an elegant twist, exposing the line of her neck where a single strand of pearls rested. She looked composed, untouchable, like she'd been born to sit among this crowd. And next to her, Nico Valenti was exactly as intimidating in person as he'd been in photographs. Maybe more so. He sat with the stillness of a man who'd never felt uncomfortable anywhere in his life, one arm draped casually across the back of Lena's chair, in a gesture of ownership that made Marcus's jaw tighten. Valenti was looking at his phone, scrolling with his free hand, apparently bored by the pageantry around him. Lena was looking directly at Marcus. Their eyes met across the garden, and for a moment the noise of the gathering crowd faded. She didn't smile, didn't nod, just looked at him with an expression he couldn't read, something between curiosity and sadness and perhaps pity. Then the moment broke. Valenti said something to her, and she turned her attention to him, leaning in close to listen. Marcus watched her laugh at whatever he'd said, a hand on his arm, and felt something ugly twist in his chest. Marcus, Jordan's voice pulled him back. We need to take our positions. The ceremony began at 2 o'clock exactly. Marcus stood at the altar beside the officiant, a family friend of the Whitmores who'd probably married half of San Francisco society, and watched the bridesmaids process down the aisle in their coordinated silk gowns. The quartet shifted to Pachelbel's canon, and everyone stood. Sloane appeared at the far end of the aisle on her father's arm, and Marcus had to admit she was stunning. Her dress was a masterpiece of lace and silk, probably couture, probably worth more than most people's cars. A cathedral-length veil trailed behind her, held by 2 flower girls who took their job very seriously. Sloane's smile was radiant, confident, absolutely certain of her place in the world and in this moment. She was everything Lena hadn't been at their courthouse wedding. Everything Marcus had thought he wanted. So why did his eyes keep drifting to the 5th row? The ceremony proceeded according to script. Traditional vows, exchange of rings, the officiant's pronouncements about love and commitment and the joining of 2 families. Marcus said his lines at the right times, slipped the ring onto Sloane's finger, kissed her when instructed. The guests applauded. The quartet played something triumphant. They were married. As Marcus walked back down the aisle with Sloane on his arm, smiling for the photographer who was documenting every moment, he caught one more glimpse of Lena. She was applauding with everyone else, her expression pleasant but neutral. Valenti had put away his phone and was standing dutifully, though he looked like he'd rather be anywhere else. Then they were past, moving toward the receiving line that had been set up near the terrace entrance, and Marcus forced himself to focus on the task at hand. Greeting guests, accepting congratulations, playing the role of happy groom. The receiving line took 40 minutes. Marcus shook hands until his palm hurt, accepted kisses on the cheek from Sloane's relatives, posed for countless selfies with guests who wanted proof they'd been here. Sloane was in her element, gracious and charming, making everyone feel special with just a few words. And then, congratulations. Marcus looked up to find Nico Valenti standing before him, hand extended. Up close, the man was even more imposing. Tall, at least 6'2", with the kind of presence that made the space around him feel smaller. His handshake was firm, but not aggressive, the grip of someone who had nothing to prove. Thank you, Marcus managed. I'm glad you could make it. Beautiful ceremony. Valenti's accent was slight but present, Italian vowels softening his English. My compliments to your planners, everything was very precise. We tried. Marcus glanced past Valenti, looking for Lena, but she'd moved on to greet Sloane. He watched his new wife kiss Lena's cheek, watched them exchange words he couldn't hear. Your company's doing well, Valenti said, drawing Marcus's attention back. The Q2 numbers were impressive. So he did know, did pay attention to his investments. You saw the quarterly report? I see all the reports. Meridian Holdings is one of my more successful vehicles. Valenti's dark eyes studied Marcus with unsettling intensity. You should be proud. You've built something substantial. Thank you, though I have to admit I only recently discovered that Meridian was connected to Valenti Capital. Yes, we prefer to keep our portfolio structure private. Too much attention makes people nervous. Valenti smiled, but it didn't quite reach his eyes. Though in this case, I suspect you would have found out eventually. My wife was curious about accepting your invitation, and I don't keep secrets from her. Your wife? Marcus couldn't help himself. How long have you and Lena been married? 4 years this September. We met at a charity auction. She was working with the organization. I was donating. She impressed me with her intelligence and her directness. I don't impress easily. Marcus felt like he was being delivered a message, though he wasn't sure what it was. Before he could formulate a response, Lena appeared at Valenti's elbow. Nico, you're monopolizing the groom, she said lightly. Then to Marcus. Hello, Marcus. Lena. Her name felt strange on his tongue after so many years. You look well. So do you. Marriage suits you. She glanced at Sloane, who was still greeting guests further down the line. She's lovely, very poised. She's perfect, Marcus said, and heard how defensive it sounded. Lena's smile didn't waver. I'm happy for you, truly. You've accomplished everything you set out to do. Have I? The question came out sharper than Marcus intended. Lena's expression shifted slightly, something knowing flickering in her eyes. That's something only you can answer, she said quietly. Then louder. We should move along. There's quite a line behind us, but thank you for inviting us. It was a kind gesture. Kind. The word felt like a knife sliding between his ribs. Valenti nodded once more, placed a possessive hand on the small of Lena's back, and guided her away toward the cocktail hour that was forming on the lawn. Marcus watched them go, watched how naturally Lena moved in this world of wealth and privilege, how easily she belonged. Who was that? Sloane asked, appearing at his side. Lena and her husband. Oh. Sloane followed his gaze. Well, she seems nice. Very gracious about everything. Yeah. Marcus turned back to the receiving line, to the next guest waiting to congratulate him. Very gracious. The cocktail hour was a parade of past hors d'oeuvres and specialty drinks, waiters in crisp uniforms gliding through the crowd with trays of champagne and canapes that probably cost $20 each. Marcus and Sloane circulated together, his hand at the small of her back, accepting toasts and well-wishes while a jazz trio played on the terrace. Marcus tried to focus on the moment, on his new wife, on the celebration, but his eyes kept finding Lena across the lawn. She and Valenti stood in a small group with some of Sloane's family friends, fitting in seamlessly. Lena laughed at something someone said, and Marcus realized he'd forgotten the sound of her laugh. It was lighter than he remembered, less guarded. You're staring, Sloane murmured in his ear. Marcus forced himself to look away. Sorry. It's fine. I'm curious too. Sloane sipped her champagne. Should we go talk to them? Properly, I mean? Get it over with? I don't think... But Sloane was already moving, threading through the crowd with purpose, and Marcus had no choice but to follow. They approached just as Valenti was finishing some story that had the group chuckling. He saw them coming and smoothly created space in the circle. The happy couple, Valenti said. We were just admiring your estate, Mrs. Hale. It's exceptional. Thank you, and please call me Sloane. She turned to Lena with genuine warmth. I've been wanting to properly meet you. Marcus has told me so much. Has he? Lena's tone was neutral, polite. I hope at least some of it was kind. All of it was honest, Marcus said before he could stop himself. A beat of awkward silence. Then Sloane laughed, breaking the tension. Marcus has a tendency toward brutal honesty. I'm sure you remember that about him. I do, Lena said. Though in my experience, honesty is undervalued. It's refreshing, even when it stings. How did you two meet? Sloane asked Valenti. Marcus mentioned you've been married for 4 years? A charity event, Valenti said smoothly. Lena was organizing. I was writing checks. She told me my donation was insufficient given my net worth. No one had spoken to me that way in years. I was charmed. Lena shook her head, smiling. I was mortified afterward. But Nico called the next day and doubled his donation, and asked me to dinner. I don't like being told no, Valenti said, but I respect people who have the courage to say it. Marcus watched them together, noting the easy way they stood, the casual intimacy of long partnership. Valenti's hand rested on Lena's hip, and she leaned into him slightly, unconsciously. They fit together in a way that spoke of genuine connection, not just convenient arrangement. It made Marcus's chest tight. And now you manage his charitable foundation? Sloane asked Lena. Among other things, I oversee the education initiatives primarily. It keeps me busy. Lena has a gift for identifying talent, Valenti added. She can look at a scholarship application and see not just grades but potential. It's quite remarkable. The way he said it, with genuine pride, genuine respect, made something in Marcus crack. Is that how you spotted Halotech's potential? The words came out before Marcus could stop them. When you invested through Meridian Holdings? The group went quiet. Sloane's hand tightened on Marcus's arm in warning. Lena met his eyes steadily. I did recommend that investment, yes. The technology was sound, the market timing was right, and the founder, she paused, had the kind of drive that usually succeeds, given enough support. Support, Marcus repeated. Is that what you call it? Marcus, Sloane said quietly. Maybe we should... No, it's fine. Lena's voice was calm. It's a fair question. Marcus is wondering why his ex-wife's investment firm helped fund his success. I imagine it seems contradictory. It seems like something, Marcus said. Valenti's expression had gone very still, his eyes moving between Marcus and Lena with predatory alertness. But he remained silent, letting Lena handle it. The truth is simple, Lena said. When Meridian's analysts brought Halotech to our attention 3 years ago, I saw the potential immediately. I also saw your name as founder. I disclosed our prior relationship to Nico, and we discussed whether that created a conflict of interest. And Marcus's heart was pounding, and we decided it didn't. Business is business. The investment was sound regardless of personal history. We made it. It's done well. Everyone wins. Lena's expression was unreadable. Unless you'd prefer we hadn't invested. We could certainly divest if our involvement makes you uncomfortable. The offer was delivered pleasantly, but Marcus heard the steel underneath. Divesting would mean Valenti Capital selling their stake, possibly to a less friendly investor. It would mean losing allies who had, whether Marcus liked it or not, helped fund his growth. No, Marcus said finally. That won't be necessary. Then I'm not sure what the issue is. Lena's smile was kind, which somehow made it worse. You built a good company. We backed it. You succeeded. Isn't that what you wanted? Yes. No. Marcus didn't know anymore. If you'll excuse us, Valenti said smoothly, taking Lena's elbow, I see some colleagues we should greet. Congratulations again. It's a beautiful wedding. They moved away, disappearing into the crowd. Marcus stood frozen, aware of Sloane beside him, aware of the other guests who'd witnessed the exchange pretending they hadn't. "Well," Sloane said lightly, "that was awkward." Marcus couldn't speak. His mind was reeling. Lena had recommended the investment, had seen his name and decided to fund him anyway. Why? Guilt? Pity? Some elaborate long game he didn't understand? "Come on," Sloane said, tugging his arm. "They're about to announce dinner. We need to make our entrance." The reception was held in a tent that had been transformed into something out of a fairy tale. Thousands of white roses, crystal chandeliers hung from the ceiling, tables set with china and silver that caught the light like stars. The head table was elevated on a platform, giving Marcus and Sloane a perfect view of the entire gathering, including table 12, where Lena and Valenti sat with several other couples Marcus didn't recognize. He watched them throughout dinner, unable to help himself, watched Lena laugh at something the woman next to her said, watched Valenti lean over to whisper in her ear, watched them exist in their world, completely comfortable, completely at ease. The dinner courses came and went, endive salad, seared scallops, filet mignon so tender it barely needed a knife. Speeches were made. Jordan gave a best man toast that was just inappropriate enough to get laughs. Sloane's maid of honor cried through her speech about lifelong friendship. Sloane's father stood and welcomed Marcus into the family with words about legacy and worthiness that should have made Marcus proud. Instead, he felt hollow. After dinner, as the DJ started setting up and guests began to mingle again, Marcus excused himself. He needed air, needed space, needed to think. He found himself walking the perimeter of the estate, past the tent and the terrace, out toward the vineyard where the land sloped down toward darkness. The music from the reception faded to a distant pulse. Above him, stars were beginning to appear in the twilight sky. Beautiful view. Marcus spun around. Lena stood 10 feet away, champagne flute in hand, her dress catching the last light of the day. "You followed me," Marcus said. "I saw you leave. You had that look, the one you used to get when you needed to escape and think. I thought maybe we should talk. Properly, I mean. Without an audience." "Where's your husband?" "Taking a business call. Some crisis in Tokyo that couldn't wait." Lena moved closer, stopped a few feet away. "He'll find me when he's done. He always does." They stood in silence for a moment. In the distance, Marcus could hear laughter from the reception, the bass line of whatever song was playing. "Why did you come?" Marcus asked finally. "You invited me." "That's not an answer," Lena sighed, looking out over the vineyard. "You're right. It's not." She paused, seemed to gather her thoughts. "The truth. I was curious. When that invitation arrived, Nico asked me if I wanted to go, and I surprised myself by saying yes. I wanted to see you. Wanted to see what kind of man you'd become. And? And you're exactly what I thought you'd be. Successful, driven, surrounded by people who validate that success." Lena met his eyes. "But you're not happy, Marcus. Anyone can see that. You don't know anything about my happiness." "Don't I?" Her voice was gentle, not mocking. "I knew you for 5 years, married to you for 3. I know what you look like when you're genuinely satisfied, and this isn't it." Marcus felt anger flare in his chest. "You don't get to do that. You don't get to walk back into my life after 7 years, after telling me I'd never amount to anything, and psychoanalyze me. I never said you'd never amount to anything. You said I was chasing fantasies, that I'd wake up at 45 in the same apartment still failing. I said I was afraid that would happen. There's a difference." Lena's expression softened. "Marcus, I left because I couldn't live in uncertainty anymore. I was 28 and exhausted and scared. I needed stability. That doesn't mean I didn't believe you were talented. It just meant I couldn't wait to find out if that talent would translate to success. So you left and married a billionaire." "I didn't marry Nico for his money. I married him because he saw me as a partner, not a supporter, because he challenged me to build something of my own instead of just orbiting someone else's dreams." Lena took a step closer. "You needed me to believe in you, Marcus, constantly, completely. It was exhausting being your only source of validation." The words hit like a punch. "That's not fair. Isn't it? Every time a meeting went badly, every time funding fell through, you'd come home and I'd have to convince you that you weren't a failure, that it would work out, that you just had to keep pushing. I became your emotional support system instead of your wife. Lena's voice remained calm, factual. I couldn't do it anymore. I was drowning. Marcus wanted to argue, to defend himself, but the words stuck in his throat, because there was truth in what she was saying. He remembered those nights, coming home defeated, needing Lena to tell him it would be okay, needing her belief to fuel his own. So you invested in my company out of what? Guilt? I invested because it was a smart investment, and yes, maybe because I wanted you to succeed. Is that so terrible? Just because we couldn't make a marriage work doesn't mean I wanted you to fail. Then why come here? Why show up at my wedding with your billionaire husband and your perfect life and— Marcus stopped, choking on the words. And what? And prove that you were right, he finished quietly, that you made the right choice leaving me. Lena was silent for a long moment. When she spoke, her voice was sad. Marcus, I didn't come here to prove anything. I came because you invited me, because part of me thought maybe you'd finally found peace and wanted to share it, but instead— She gestured back toward the tent, toward the reception. Instead, I find you throwing yourself a very expensive party designed to prove something to everyone, including yourself. That's not— It is. This whole wedding is about validation, about showing the world that Marcus Hale made it, that everyone who doubted you was wrong. Well, Lena's eyes were kind but unflinching. But here's what I've learned. If you need other people to confirm your success, you'll never feel successful. Not really. Marcus felt something break inside him. You don't understand. I understand better than you think. I spent 3 years trying to be enough for you, trying to believe hard enough for both of us, and it was never sufficient. You needed more, needed bigger, needed— She stopped, shook her head. I hope Sloane can give you what you need. I really do. She seems strong enough to carry that weight. Lena, I should get back. Nico will be looking for me. She started to walk away, then paused. For what it's worth, I'm genuinely happy for you. You deserve to succeed. You worked hard, you were brilliant, and you earned everything you have. I hope someday you can believe that without needing a crowd to confirm it. Then she was gone, walking back toward the lights and music, leaving Marcus alone in the gathering darkness with the taste of truth bitter in his mouth. He stood there for a long time, watching the stars emerge one by one, feeling the foundation of his perfect day crack and shift beneath him. When Marcus finally returned to the reception, the party was in full swing. The DJ had the dance floor packed, strobe lights cutting through the darkness inside the tent, and the bar was doing steady business. He found Sloane holding court near the champagne fountain, surrounded by her college friends, all of them flushed with wine and laughter. She saw him approaching, and her smile flickered just for a second. Then it was back, bright and perfect. There you are, she said, reaching for his hand. I was about to send out a search party. Sorry, needed some air. Well, you're back now. Come dance with me. They're about to play our song. Marcus let himself be pulled onto the dance floor as the DJ transitioned into their first dance song, some romantic ballad that Sloane had chosen because it had been playing when they first kissed. He held her and moved through the steps they'd practiced, aware of phones recording them, of guests watching and smiling. Sloane leaned her head against his shoulder. This is perfect, isn't it? Everything we dreamed about. Yeah, Marcus said. Perfect. But his eyes found Lena across the tent. She was dancing with Valenti, and they moved together with the ease of people who'd done this 1,000 times before. Valenti said something in her ear, and Lena threw her head back and laughed, genuine and unguarded in a way Marcus suddenly realized he'd rarely seen when they were married. She looked happy, truly happy, and it ate at him like acid. The song ended. Sloane kissed him, and the crowd applauded. Then she was swept away by her bridesmaids for photographs, and Marcus found himself alone again in the middle of his own wedding reception. Jordan appeared at his elbow with 2 glasses of whiskey. You look like you need this. Marcus took it, drank. The burn felt good, clarifying. Thanks. Want to talk about it? About what? About the fact that you've spent your entire wedding day watching your ex-wife instead of your actual wife. Marcus flinched. I haven't. Marcus, I've known you for 8 years. I can read you like a billboard. Jordan sipped his own whiskey. What did she say to you? Out there in the vineyard? The truth. Marcus finished his glass in one swallow. She told me the truth and I didn't want to hear it. Which was? Marcus looked at his best man, his oldest friend, the person who'd been there through all of it, the failures and the victories, the divorce and the rebuild. That I'm not happy, that this whole thing, he gestured at the tent, at the celebration, at everything, is just an elaborate performance designed to prove something that can't actually be proven. Jordan was quiet for a long moment. Then he said, "Is she right?" "I don't know. Maybe. Probably." Marcus set his empty glass on a passing waiter's tray. "I thought if I could just show her, just prove that leaving me was the worst mistake she ever made, then I'd feel, I don't know, vindicated, complete. But instead I just feel empty." "Yeah. So what are you going to do about it?" Marcus looked across the tent again. Lena and Valenti were at their table now, engaged in conversation with the other guests. They looked like they belonged here, like they belonged everywhere, like the world had been designed specifically to accommodate them. "I'm going to make a toast," Marcus said. Jordan's eyes widened. "Marcus, I don't think... I need to do this. I need to..." He stopped, trying to find the words. "I invited her here to humiliate her, to show her what she lost. But she's not the one who lost anything, Jordan. I am. And I need her to know that I know that. You're drunk. I'm sober enough." Marcus straightened his bow tie, squared his shoulders. "And it's my wedding. I can toast whoever I want." He walked to the DJ booth before Jordan could stop him, before he could talk himself out of it, before the voice of reason in his head could scream that this was a terrible idea. The DJ saw him coming and handed over the microphone without being asked. Marcus tapped it twice. The feedback screech cut through the music and the dancing stopped. Conversations died. 247 guests turned to look at him. 248, if you counted Lena. "Sorry to interrupt," Marcus said, his voice amplified and echoing slightly in the tent. "But I wanted to take a moment to thank everyone for being here tonight. This has been..." He paused, searching for the right word. "An illuminating day." Polite laughter. Sloane was making her way toward him from across the tent, her expression uncertain. "Marriage is interesting, isn't it?" Marcus continued. "The idea that you can promise forever to someone, that you can build a whole life together, and then sometimes it doesn't work out. Sometimes people leave. Sometimes people decide you're not enough." The laughter had stopped. The tent had gone very quiet. "Marcus," Sloane said, reaching him, "maybe we should..." "Did you know," Marcus said, ignoring her, his eyes finding Lena in the crowd, "that my first marriage ended because I was chasing a dream? My first wife, Lena, who's here tonight, actually, she told me I needed to grow up, get a real job, stop wasting time on fantasies that would never pay off." Lena had gone very still. Valenti's hand was on her arm, his expression unreadable. "And you know what? She was right to leave. Because I was a mess. I was broke and desperate and so convinced that I was going to change the world that I couldn't see how I was dragging her down with me." Marcus's laugh sounded broken even to his own ears. "So she filed for divorce. And 3 months later I got my first round of funding. Isn't that funny? 3 months." Marcus put down the microphone. Sloane's voice was low, urgent. "But here's the really funny part," Marcus continued. "Years later, when I finally built something real, when Halotech was actually succeeding, do you know who invested? Who helped fund my success?" He pointed at Lena. "My ex-wife. Her investment firm. They own 8% of my company, 8% of everything I built to prove her wrong, and she owns a piece of it. How's that for irony?" The tent was silent enough to hear someone's phone buzzing. Lena stood slowly. Valenti stood with her, his expression dangerous now. But Lena put a hand on his chest, stopping him. Then she walked toward Marcus, her champagne-colored dress catching the light, her expression calm. She reached the small platform where Marcus stood with the microphone, climbed the 2 steps up, and held out her hand. "May I?" she asked quietly. Marcus stared at her. Then, because he didn't know what else to do, he handed her the microphone. Lena turned to face the crowd. When she spoke, her voice was clear and steady. "Thank you for sharing that, Marcus. Though I think you left out some important context." She paused, let the silence build. "It's true that Valenti Capital, through one of our investment vehicles, holds a stake in Halo Tech. It's also true that I personally recommended that investment to my husband. Murmurs rippled through the crowd. Sloane had gone pale. But what Marcus didn't mention, Lena continued, is that I recommended it because the business model was sound, because the technology was innovative, because the founder, despite his personal flaws, was brilliant and driven and capable of extraordinary things. She looked at Marcus. I didn't invest to hurt you. I invested because I believed in what you were building, even if I couldn't believe in us anymore. Lena, Marcus started, let me finish. Her voice was kind but firm. You invited me here today for a reason. You wanted me to see your success, your beautiful bride, your perfect wedding, your vindication. And I have seen it, all of it. But Marcus, if you need me to feel regret for leaving you, I can't give you that. Because the truth is, we were both drowning. I was exhausted from trying to be your foundation, and you were suffocating under expectations you set for yourself. We couldn't save each other. We could barely save ourselves. The tent was so quiet Marcus could hear his own heartbeat. After our divorce, Lena said, addressing the crowd now, I spent 2 years rebuilding myself. I went back to school, got my MBA, learned to value my own capabilities instead of defining myself through someone else's potential. And then I met Nico. She looked toward her husband, who was watching her with an expression that was equal parts pride and controlled fury. And he showed me what partnership actually looks like. Not someone who needs constant validation, but someone who challenges me to be better while respecting who I already am. She turned back to Marcus. So yes, I invested in your company, and yes, I came to your wedding. Not because you invited me, but because I wanted to close a door that I never properly shut 7 years ago. I wanted to look you in the eye and tell you that I'm sorry I couldn't be what you needed, but I'm not sorry I left. And I genuinely hope, that you find whatever it is you're actually looking for. Because it's not in this tent, it's not in proving me wrong. It's not in making me regret a decision that saved us both. She handed the microphone back to Marcus. Congratulations on your marriage, she said quietly, just to him. I mean that. Sloane seems wonderful. Don't waste her time trying to fix something that was broken 7 years ago. Then she descended the platform, took Valenti's arm, and walked out of the tent. The crowd parted for them like water. No one spoke. No one moved. Until Sloane slapped Marcus across the face. The crack echoed in the silent tent. Marcus's head snapped to the side, his cheek burning. When he looked back at his wife, her eyes were filled with tears of rage. You humiliated me, she said, her voice shaking. At my own wedding, in front of my family. You stood up here and told 200 people that you're still in love with your ex-wife. I didn't say that. You didn't have to. Sloane's carefully maintained composure was cracking. Do you think I'm stupid? Do you think I didn't notice you watching her all day? That I didn't see you disappear and come back looking like someone had torn your heart out? I thought, her voice broke. I thought if I gave you this wedding, if I let you invite her and prove yourself, you'd finally be free of her. But you're not, are you? You never will be. Sloane, please, don't. She held up a hand and Marcus saw that she was still wearing her wedding ring, still wearing the $10,000 Harry Winston band he'd slipped onto her finger 6 hours ago. Don't say anything else. You've said enough. She turned and walked away, her bridesmaids immediately surrounding her like a protective wall. They disappeared into a side entrance of the estate house, and Marcus was left standing on the platform with 247 guests staring at him in various states of shock, pity, and secondhand embarrassment. Jordan climbed onto the platform, took the microphone from Marcus's nerveless fingers, and addressed the crowd. Ladies and gentlemen, thank you for celebrating with us tonight. I think we're going to call it an early evening. Please enjoy the dessert bar on your way out and drive safely. The DJ, bless him, started playing music again, low and unobtrusive, giving people something to focus on besides the disaster they'd just witnessed. The crowd began to disperse, some heading for the exit, others clustering in groups to whisper about what they'd just seen. Marcus's parents approached, his mother's face creased with concern. Honey, what was that about? She asked. I don't know, Mom. Marcus felt exhausted suddenly, bone-deep tired. I really don't know. His father put a hand on his shoulder. Why don't you come with us? We have a room at the hotel in town. You can sleep this off, figure out what to do tomorrow. But Marcus shook his head. No. I need to talk to Sloan. I need to fix this. Son, I don't think... I can fix this, Marcus insisted. I just need to explain. I need to... He didn't finish the sentence. He pushed past his parents, past Jordan, past the remaining guests, and headed for the estate house. He knew where Sloan would be, the bridal suite on the second floor, the room where she'd gotten ready this morning, a lifetime ago. He took the stairs two at a time, his polished dress shoes slipping slightly on the marble. The hallway was quiet, but he could hear voices behind the bridal suite door. Female voices, urgent and angry. Marcus knocked. The door opened 6 inches. Ainsley, Sloane's cousin, blocked the entrance with her body. She doesn't want to see you. I need to talk to her, please. You've done enough talking for one night. Ainsley, please. This is my wedding day, our wedding day. You need to leave. This voice was different. Sloane's mother, appearing behind Ainsley. Patricia Whitmore looked at Marcus like he was something she'd found on the bottom of her shoe. My daughter is devastated. You stood up in front of our entire family and our friends and made a spectacle of yourself, of her, of this marriage before it even really began. I made a mistake. I was drunk and stupid, and You were honest, Patricia cut him off. For the first time all day, maybe for the first time since you met my daughter, you were completely honest. And the truth is you married Sloan while still being in love with someone else. That's not true, isn't it? Patricia's expression was cold. Marcus, I liked you. I thought you were smart and driven and exactly what Sloan needed. But I was wrong. What she needs is someone who sees her as more than a trophy, more than proof of success. Someone who loves her for herself, not for what loving her says about him. The words hit like bullets. Marcus opened his mouth to argue, to defend himself, but nothing came out. Give her tonight, Patricia said, her voice softening slightly. Let her process this. In the morning, you can talk. But right now, you need to leave. The door closed in his face. Marcus stood in the hallway, still in his tuxedo, still wearing his wedding ring, and felt the full weight of what he'd done crash down on him. He'd destroyed his marriage on his wedding night. He'd humiliated his wife in front of everyone she knew. He'd proven Lena right about everything. Marcus walked back downstairs in a daze. The tent was mostly empty now, just catering staff breaking down tables and the DJ packing his equipment. The fairy tale setting that had cost a fortune looked sad and hollow in the harsh work lights that had replaced the romantic ambiance. Jordan was waiting for him near the entrance. Where are you going to go? He asked. Marcus hadn't thought that far ahead. Hotel, I guess. There's that place in town. It's full. Everyone from out of town is staying there. You'll never get a room this late. Then I'll drive back to the city. Marcus, you're in no condition to drive 3 hours. You've been drinking, you're emotional, and... Jordan stopped. Look, Sarah and I have a room. It's got a pull-out couch. You can crash there. We'll figure everything out in the morning. Marcus wanted to argue, to maintain some shred of dignity, but he was too tired, too broken. Okay, he said. Thanks. They walked to Jordan's car in silence. The valet had long since given up and gone home, so they had to find it themselves in the makeshift parking field. The valley was dark and quiet, the stars overhead indifferent to the human drama below. Jordan's fiancée Sarah was already in the car, having wisely left before the speech. She took one look at Marcus and said nothing, just moved to the back seat to give him the passenger seat. The drive to town took 20 minutes. No one spoke. The radio played soft jazz, and Marcus watched the dark vineyards roll past and wondered how everything had gone so wrong so fast. Jordan and Sarah's hotel room was generic and beige, the kind of place that existed in every small town in America. Sarah set up the pull-out couch without comment, while Jordan found Marcus a t-shirt and sweatpants to sleep in. Bathroom's through there if you want to wash up, Jordan said. Marcus looked down at himself. He was still wearing his wedding tuxedo, still had the boutonniere pinned to his lapel. It felt like a costume now, a costume for a role he'd failed to play convincingly. He went into the bathroom, locked the door, and stared at himself in the mirror. His reflection looked haunted, tie askew, hair mussed from running his hands through it, eyes hollow. This was supposed to be the happiest day of his life, his triumph, his vindication. Instead, it was the day he'd lost everything. Marcus stripped off the tuxedo carefully, hanging it on the back of the door. Each piece felt symbolic. The jacket with its silk lining, the custom shirt with his initials monogrammed on the cuff, the pants that had been tailored to perfection. He'd spent a fortune on this outfit, worn it for maybe 8 hours. Now he was standing in a cheap hotel bathroom in borrowed sweats, and the tuxedo looked like evidence from a crime scene. He washed his face, brushed his teeth with the disposable toothbrush the hotel provided, and tried not to think about the fact that he should be in the bridal suite right now with his wife. Should be starting their honeymoon. Should be happy. When he came out, Jordan and Sarah were already in bed, the lights turned low. The pull-out couch was ready, a thin blanket folded at the foot. "Thank you," Marcus said quietly. "Get some sleep," Jordan replied. "We'll talk in the morning." But sleep didn't come. Marcus lay on the uncomfortable mattress, staring at the ceiling, replaying the entire day in his mind. The ceremony, the receiving line, the conversation with Lena in the vineyard, the speech, Sloane's face when she slapped him. Lena's words kept echoing in his head. "If you need me to feel regret for leaving you, I can't give you that. I'm not sorry I left." Don't waste her time trying to fix something that was broken 7 years ago. Marcus pulled out his phone, the screen too bright in the dark room. He had 17 missed calls. His parents, Sloane's parents, some of the groomsmen, 43 text messages he didn't want to read, and 3 emails, 2 of them from Halo Tech's board members who'd been at the wedding. He ignored all of it and opened a web browser. Typed in Nico Valenti. The Forbes article came up again. The photograph of Valenti at some tech conference, looking sharp and dangerous. Marcus clicked through to another article, this one from a business journal about Valenti Capital's investment philosophy. "We don't invest in companies," Valenti was quoted as saying. "We invest in people, specifically in people who have the capacity to transform markets. Technical skill can be taught. Vision cannot." Marcus kept reading. "When evaluating potential investments, we look for founders who demonstrate 3 qualities: intellectual honesty, adaptive resilience, and the ability to build genuine partnerships. A brilliant idea executed by someone who can't collaborate or can't admit mistakes will always fail. We avoid those investments, no matter how promising the technology." The words felt like they were written specifically for Marcus to find. Like Valenti had known, somehow, that he'd be reading this at 2 in the morning on his wedding night after destroying his marriage. Intellectual honesty. Adaptive resilience. Genuine partnership. Marcus possessed exactly none of those qualities. He'd spent 7 years lying to himself about what he wanted. Spent 7 years refusing to adapt to the simple truth that success without connection meant nothing. Spent 7 years, including today, treating relationships as transactions, as means to an end, as supporting characters in the story of Marcus Hale's rise to glory. And now he was alone in a hotel room, married to a woman he'd just humiliated, still obsessing over the one who got away. Marcus set his phone down and closed his eyes. Tomorrow, he'd have to face Sloane. Have to apologize, explain, beg for forgiveness. Tomorrow he'd have to deal with the fallout from the most public relationship disaster since ever, probably. Someone had definitely been filming. The video was probably already viral. But tonight, in the darkness of this anonymous room, Marcus had to face something harder. He had to face the fact that Lena was right. About all of it. He'd invited her to his wedding to prove she'd made a mistake leaving him. But the only person who'd made a mistake was Marcus. The mistake of thinking that external success could fill an internal void. The mistake of believing that if he just achieved enough, earned enough, impressed enough people, he'd finally feel like he was enough. The mistake of marrying someone he respected but didn't actually love, not the way she deserved to be loved. Marcus had proposed to Sloane because she understood his ambition, because she never asked him to choose between her and his work, because she made sense on paper, beautiful, connected, from the right family, impressed by the right things. But he'd never once looked at Sloane the way Valenti looked at Lena, like she was the entire point, like everything else was just detail work. Marcus thought about Lena dancing with her husband, laughing at whatever he'd whispered in her ear. Thought about the way she'd held Valenti back when Marcus's speech started getting ugly, protecting both Marcus and her husband from a confrontation that would have ended badly for everyone. Thought about how she'd taken the microphone with grace and dignity and told the truth without cruelty. She'd grown into someone remarkable, someone who didn't need external validation because she'd found internal worth. someone who'd built a life based on genuine partnership instead of transaction. And Marcus had stood on a platform at his own wedding reception and made that growth about himself, made her success about his failure, made her happiness about his vindication. He really was an asshole. Somewhere around 4 in the morning, Marcus finally fell into fitful sleep. He dreamed of the cramped apartment he'd shared with Lena, of takeout containers and student loan bills and her disappointed face. But in the dream, when she said, "I can't do this anymore," Marcus said, "I know," instead of arguing, said, "I'm sorry," instead of defending himself, said, "I hope you find what you're looking for," instead of making it about his wounded pride. In the dream, they parted as friends. In the dream, he let her go. He woke to sun streaming through the hotel curtains and Jordan's hand on his shoulder. "Marcus, wake up. You need to see this." Marcus sat up, disoriented. Jordan was holding out his phone, and on the screen was a video. Marcus recognized the tent, the platform, himself holding a microphone. "How bad is it?" he asked. 20 million views and counting, Jordan said grimly. "You're trending on 3 different platforms. TMZ picked it up. So did Entertainment Tonight. There's already a hashtag." Of course there was. Marcus took the phone and watched himself destroy his marriage in high definition. Someone had caught the whole thing. His speech, Lena taking the microphone, her dignified response, Sloane's slap. The comments were brutal. "This is the most painful thing I've ever watched." Imagine being Sloane. Your husband uses your wedding to confess he's still in love with his ex. Team Lena, she handled that with class. That slap was deserved. Good for her. Marcus handed the phone back. "I need to talk to Sloane." "Already tried. Her mother said she's not taking calls." "Then I'll go to the estate. I'll wait outside the bridal suite until she agrees to see me." Jordan looked at him seriously. "Marcus, are you going to apologize because you're sorry or because you want to fix your image?" The question hung in the air between them. "I don't know," Marcus admitted. "Both, maybe. Is that wrong?" "It's honest, at least." Jordan sat down on the edge of the pull-out couch. "Can I give you some advice? Friend to friend, not CFO to CEO?" "Go ahead." "Stop trying to fix this. Stop trying to control the narrative. Stop thinking about what this looks like and start thinking about what it actually is." Which is a marriage that maybe shouldn't have happened. At least not yet. Not while you're still working through whatever you need to work through about Lena. Marcus wanted to argue, but the words died in his throat. Because Jordan was right. Of course he was right. "So what do I do?" Marcus asked. "You give Sloane space. You give yourself space. And you figure out who Marcus Hale actually is when he's not performing for an audience." Marcus spent the next 3 days in his penthouse, ignoring calls, and watching his life implode in real time. The video had gone viral in the worst possible way, spawning think pieces about toxic masculinity, attachment issues, and the perils of trophy marriages. Late-night hosts made jokes. Twitter psychologists diagnosed him with narcissistic personality disorder. Someone created a parody account called Sad Wedding Guy that gained 500,000 followers in 48 hours. Halo Tech's board called an emergency meeting. Marcus joined via video conference from his living room, unshaven and wearing the same t-shirt for the 3rd day straight. "We need to discuss the optics," said Martin Voss, the board chair, and a veteran of 3 successful exits. His face on the screen looked grave. "The company's stock took a hit when the video went viral. Our PR team is getting hammered with questions about leadership stability." "I understand," Marcus said. His voice sounded hollow. "I'll make a statement. Apologize. Take full responsibility." "That's a start, but Marcus—" Martin paused, choosing his words carefully. "The board is concerned about your judgment. This wasn't just a personal embarrassment. You publicly admitted that one of our major investors has a personal connection to you that you failed to disclose." "I didn't know about the investment until recently." "That's not the point. The point is we have a CEO who's making headlines for all the wrong reasons, and our investors are nervous. We need to restore confidence." Marcus felt anger flare through the numbness. "Are you asking me to step down?" "We're asking you to take a leave of absence. 3 months. Let Jordan run operations. Let the news cycle move on, and give yourself time to sort out your personal situation." And if I refuse? Martin's expression hardened. Then we'll call a vote. And I think you know how that will go. Marcus looked at the faces on his screen. The board members he'd cultivated relationships with, the investors he'd pitched to, the advisors he'd brought on to legitimize Halotech's governance. Not one of them would meet his eyes. Fine, he said. 3 months. Good. We'll draft an announcement. Focus on personal time, family matters, that sort of thing. Nothing that suggests incompetence or instability. The meeting ended. Marcus closed his laptop and sat in the silence of his penthouse, looking out at the San Francisco skyline. His phone buzzed with another text from Sloane's lawyer. She'd retained counsel 2 days ago, and they were already discussing terms. Not divorce. Not yet. But separation. Space to evaluate the marriage and determine next steps. Very civilized. Very reasonable. Very much over. Marcus hadn't fought it. How could he? He'd humiliated her in front of everyone she knew. Viral video aside, she had every right to walk away. His phone rang. Unknown number. Marcus almost didn't answer, but something made him pick up. Mr. Hale? The voice was familiar. This is David Reeves from Chronicle Luxury Properties. We spoke a few weeks ago about an RSVP. Marcus's chest tightened. I remember. I'm calling on behalf of Mrs. Valenti. She'd like to meet with you, if you're available. Today, if possible. Why? She didn't say, but she was quite insistent that it was important. Marcus looked around his penthouse, at the expensive furniture and the architect-designed space and the life he'd built that suddenly felt like a museum exhibit of someone else's accomplishments. Where? He asked. The Vanguard building, her office. 2 o'clock, if that works. It was 11 now. Marcus would need to shower, shave, put on actual clothes, rejoin the world he'd been hiding from. I'll be there, he said. The Vanguard building was even more impressive in person than it had appeared in his Google searches. A historic Beaux-Arts masterpiece in Pacific Heights, it rose 8 stories above the tree-lined street, all ornate cornices and tall windows that spoke of old San Francisco money. The kind of building that had weathered earthquakes and market crashes and emerged intact, unshakable. Marcus gave his name to the doorman, who checked a list and nodded him toward the elevator. Penthouse, the doorman said. Mrs. Valenti is expecting you. The elevator was original to the building, all brass and mirrors and the kind of craftsmanship that didn't exist anymore. It carried Marcus up slowly, giving him time to rehearse what he might say. But by the time the doors opened directly into the penthouse, no hallway, the elevator just opened into their home. He'd abandoned all his scripts. The space was breathtaking. Floor-to-ceiling windows overlooked the bay, the Golden Gate Bridge visible in the distance. The decor was minimalist but warm, expensive pieces arranged with care, art on the walls that looked original, books everywhere, not just for show but actually read, spines cracked and pages marked. Lena stood by the windows, backlit by afternoon sun, wearing simple black pants and a white silk blouse. She looked professional, composed, nothing like the woman in the champagne dress who'd taken his microphone 4 days ago. Thank you for coming, she said. I know this is probably the last thing you want to do right now. Marcus stepped out of the elevator. I owe you an apology. You do, but that's not why I asked you here. She gestured to a seating area near the windows. Please sit. Marcus sat on a leather sofa that probably cost more than his first car. Lena took the chair across from him, crossed her legs, and studied him with those eyes that still, after all these years, saw too much. You look terrible, she said. I feel terrible. Good. You should. Her voice wasn't unkind, just matter of fact. What you did at your wedding was cruel and selfish and unfair to everyone involved, especially Sloane. I know. Do you? Because from where I'm sitting, Marcus, you seem to have a pattern of using people as props in the story you tell yourself about your life. I was the obstacle you had to overcome. Sloane was the prize you won for overcoming it. Neither of us was actually a person to you, just symbols of your success or failure. The words cut deep because they were true. Marcus looked down at his hands. I don't know how to fix this. You can't. Not with Sloane, anyway. That marriage is over, even if the divorce takes a while to finalize. Marcus flinched. You sound very certain. I am, because I've been Sloane. I know what it feels like to realize your husband sees you as validation instead of a partner. Once you see it, you can't unsee it, and you can't go back. Then why am I here, Lena? If you just wanted to tell me I'm a terrible person, you could have done that over email. Lena leaned forward, her expression serious. I asked you here because I want to show you something, and because I think maybe you're finally ready to hear the truth about what happened between us. She stood and walked to a sleek desk near the window, pulled out a folder, and returned. She set it on the coffee table between them. Open it, she said. Marcus did. Inside were documents, financial statements, investment memos, emails, all related to Halotech, all dated from 5 years ago, right around the time of the Series A funding. He looked up at Lena confused. I don't understand. Read the memo on top, the one with my name on it. Marcus found it. It was an internal investment recommendation to Valenti Capital's investment committee, written by Lena Park Valenti. The date was 3 weeks after Marcus had received his first term sheet from a major VC firm. He began to read. I'm recommending a significant investment in Halotech through Meridian Holdings. Full disclosure, the founder, Marcus Hale, is my ex-husband. We divorced 4 years ago under difficult circumstances. However, I believe this personal history makes me uniquely qualified to assess his potential as an entrepreneur. Marcus kept reading, his heart pounding. Marcus Hale is one of the most driven individuals I have ever known. His technical skills are exceptional, his vision for mobile collaboration tools is ahead of the market curve, and his work ethic is unmatched. During our marriage, I watched him work 18-hour days for 3 years straight, never wavering in his belief that he could build something transformative. However, Marcus's greatest strength is also his greatest weakness. He is incapable of accepting limitations. This made him a difficult husband. He couldn't compromise, couldn't scale back his ambitions, even when we were drowning in debt. But it makes him an excellent founder. He will not quit. He will not settle. He will push Halotech towards success through sheer force of will. Our marriage failed because I needed stability, and Marcus needed validation. I was exhausted from being his only source of faith. But as an investor, I don't need to be his emotional support. I just need to believe in his capabilities, and I do. I am recommending a $12 million investment at the current valuation. The risk is moderate, the potential return is significant, and I have absolute confidence in the founder's ability to execute. My personal feelings about Marcus Hale are irrelevant to this decision. This is good business. The memo was signed and dated. Below it were email threads showing Nico Valenti's response, questions about the technology, about the market, about Marcus's background, and Lena's responses, professional and thorough, laying out the case for investment without a trace of bitterness or revenge. Marcus set down the papers, his hands shaking. You wrote this. I did. You convinced your husband to invest $12 million in my company. I presented the opportunity. Nico made his own decision. He always does. But yes, I advocated for it. Lena's voice was calm. Because despite everything that went wrong between us, Marcus, I never stopped believing you were talented. I just couldn't be married to that talent anymore. Marcus felt something break open in his chest. Why are you showing me this now? Because you need to understand that leaving you wasn't about thinking you'd fail. It was about knowing I'd fail if I stayed. I was losing myself in your certainty, drowning in your need for constant reassurance. I had to save myself even if it meant walking away from you. And then you married a billionaire. Lena laughed, but it was sad. You still don't get it. I didn't marry Nico for his money. I married him because he saw me as an equal. Because when I told him about my ideas for expanding his charitable foundation's reach, he didn't pat my head and say, "That's nice." He asked me to write a proposal and present it to his board. Because he challenged me to get my MBA, not to support his career, but to build my own. She leaned back in her chair. Nico doesn't need me to believe in him. He believes in himself. And that freed me to believe in myself. To become someone beyond Marcus Hale's wife or the woman who left Marcus Hale. I became Lena Valenti. And she's someone I actually like. Marcus felt tears burning in his eyes. I'm sorry. For everything. For making you feel small. For not seeing you as a partner. For inviting you to my wedding like some kind of trophy? Proof of concept? Lena's smile was gentle. I know, and I forgive you. Not because you've earned it, but because holding on to anger would only hurt me. I let go of you 7 years ago, Marcus. I really did. That's why I could invest in your company without resentment, why I could come to your wedding without pain, why I can sit here now and tell you the truth without cruelty. What truth? That you're brilliant and driven and capable of extraordinary things. But until you figure out who you are without an audience, you're going to keep hurting people. Keep using them as mirrors to reflect back the image you want to see, and that's going to make you miserable, no matter how successful you become. Marcus wiped his eyes, not caring that he was crying in front of his ex-wife in her penthouse office. I don't know how to be different. Then learn. Get therapy. Take your leave of absence and actually use it to work on yourself instead of just waiting for the news cycle to move on. Figure out what you actually want from life, not what you think you're supposed to want. I don't even know where to start. Lena stood, walked to her desk again, and returned with a business card. She handed it to Marcus. Dr. Sarah Chen. She's a therapist who specializes in high-achieving individuals with attachment issues. She helped me enormously after our divorce. I think she could help you too. Marcus took the card, turned it over in his hands. You really have this all figured out, don't you? No, I just did the work. Years of it, and I'm still doing it. The difference is I'm not trying to prove anything anymore. I'm just trying to be honest about who I am and what I need. And what do you need? From you? Nothing. And I mean that in the kindest way possible. I don't need you to succeed to validate my investment. I don't need you to fail to justify leaving. I don't need anything from you at all. And that's freedom, Marcus. For both of us. They sat in silence for a moment, the afternoon sun shifting across the hardwood floors. Somewhere in the distance, a foghorn sounded from the bay. I should go, Marcus said finally. I'm sure Nico doesn't want me in his home. Nico's in London until tomorrow, and even if he were here, he'd be fine with it. He's not threatened by you. Lena's expression was wry. No offense, but you're not exactly competition. Marcus laughed despite himself. None taken. He seems like a good man. He's an excellent man. Demanding, sometimes difficult, occasionally ruthless in business, but honest, present. He sees me. Lena's face softened. That's all I ever wanted, Marcus, to be seen. Not as a supporting character or a critic or a cheerleader, just as myself. I never saw you that way, did I? No. But you were young and scared and desperate to prove yourself. I understand that now in a way I couldn't when we were married. We were both doing the best we could with who we were at the time. Marcus stood. Lena walked him to the elevator, pressed the call button. One more thing, she said as the elevator arrived. The reason I invested in Halo Tech wasn't just because it was good business. It was also because I wanted you to succeed, genuinely. I wanted you to find whatever you were chasing. I hoped that once you achieved it, you'd finally be at peace. I'm not, Marcus admitted. At peace, I mean. Even before the wedding disaster, I wasn't. I know. I could see it in your eyes when you were standing at that altar. You looked like a man checking off a box on a list, not a man marrying the love of his life. The elevator doors opened. Marcus stepped inside, turned to face her. For what it's worth, he said, seeing you again, seeing who you've become, it doesn't make me feel vindicated or angry or regretful. It just makes me glad. You deserve to find happiness. I'm sorry I couldn't give it to you. You gave me exactly what I needed, Lena said. You gave me a reason to leave, and that led me to everything I have now. So in a weird way, thank you. The doors began to close. Marcus put his hand out to stop them. Lena, the investment. If I do the work, if I actually figure myself out, will Valenti Capital keep its stake in Halo Tech? That's a business decision, not a personal one. But for what it's worth, I still believe in the technology, and I still believe you're capable of leading the company once you sort out your personal demons. So yes, unless you give us a reason to divest, we're in for the long haul. Even after everything? Especially after everything. Because now the story isn't about Marcus Hale proving his ex-wife wrong. It's about Marcus Hale building something that actually matters. And that's a much better story. The doors closed, the elevator descended, and Marcus rode down to street level feeling lighter than he had in weeks, maybe years. He'd lost his marriage, lost his position at his own company, at least temporarily. Lost the respect of his peers and become a viral joke. By any measure, the last week had been a catastrophic failure, but for the first time in 7 years, Marcus felt like he could breathe. He walked out of the Vanguard building into the crisp San Francisco afternoon and pulled out his phone. He had 42 unread emails, 27 texts, and a notification that someone had written an op-ed about him in the Wall Street Journal. Marcus ignored all of it and dialed the number on the business card Lena had given him. "Dr. Chen's office," a receptionist answered. "Hi, my name is Marcus Hale. I was referred by Lena Valenti. I'd like to make an appointment." "Of course, Mr. Hale. Let me check Dr. Chen's availability." While he waited on hold, Marcus walked toward the park at the end of the block. Families were out enjoying the weather, kids on swings, couples walking dogs. Normal people living normal lives, not performing for anyone, not trying to prove anything. "Mr. Hale? Doctor? Chen has an opening tomorrow at 10. Would that work for you?" Tomorrow. Marcus thought about his empty calendar, his leave of absence, his penthouse with nothing but his own thoughts for company. "That works perfectly," he said. That evening, Marcus sat in his penthouse with a notebook and started writing. Not code, not business plans, not emails to investors. Just thoughts, memories, truths he'd been avoiding. He wrote about his childhood, about growing up middle class and hungry, watching rich kids at his school and swearing he'd be one of them someday. About the chip on his shoulder that had driven him through college, through graduate school, through the grueling early years of building Hallotech. He wrote about meeting Lena in a coffee shop near campus, how she'd been reading a book on corporate law and he'd made some pretentious comment about the author. How she'd looked up and smiled and gently eviscerated his argument in 3 sentences. How he'd been captivated by her intelligence, her directness, her complete lack of pretense. He wrote about their wedding at City Hall, about how happy he'd been in that moment, how uncomplicated it had felt. How he'd looked at Lena in her simple dress and thought she was the most beautiful thing he'd ever seen. And then he wrote about how that simplicity had curdled, how every rejection letter, every failed pitch, every month they struggled to pay rent had made him more desperate, more volatile, more dependent on Lena's faith in him, how he'd turned her into his therapist, his cheerleader, his entire support system, how he'd sucked the life out of her one 18-hour workday at a time. He wrote about the divorce, about how shocked he'd been when she left, how he genuinely believed that if he could just hold on a little longer, if he could just make her believe a little harder, everything would work out. How he'd never once stopped to ask what she needed, what she wanted, what was draining her. He wrote about meeting Sloan at that tech conference, about how easy it had been to be with someone who didn't need him to be anything other than successful. How he'd mistaken that ease for compatibility. How he'd proposed because it made sense, because she checked all the boxes, because marrying a Whitmore felt like the final validation of everything he'd achieved. And he wrote about the wedding, about inviting Lena not to show her he was happy, but to show her he'd won, about the moment he saw her with Valenti and realized she'd won something far more valuable, about standing on that platform with a microphone and blowing up his own life because he couldn't face the truth that he was still chasing something he couldn't define, the truth that no amount of success would ever make him feel worthy, the truth that Lena leaving him had been the kindest thing she could have done. Marcus wrote until his hand cramped, until the sun set and the city lights came on, until he'd filled 20 pages with barely legible script. Then he closed the notebook and sat in the darkness of his expensive penthouse and let himself feel everything he'd been running from: grief, shame, loss, relief. His phone buzzed, a text from Jordan. "How'd it go with Lena?" Marcus typed back, "Better than I deserved. I'm seeing a therapist tomorrow." "Proud of you, man. That takes guts." Or desperation. Sometimes they're the same thing. "Want to grab dinner?" Marcus looked around his empty penthouse. "Yeah, I'd like that." They met at a dive bar in the Mission, the kind of place Marcus used to frequent when he was broke and hungry and convinced he'd change the world. It felt appropriate somehow, returning to those roots. Jordan was already there, drinking a beer and watching sports on the TV above the bar. He stood when Marcus arrived, pulled him into a hug. "You look better," Jordan said. "I showered and changed. That's a low bar." "It's a start." Jordan signaled the bartender for another round. "So you saw Lena?" "She showed me the investment memo, the one where she recommended that Valenti Capital fund Halotech." Jordan's eyebrows rose. "Seriously?" "She wrote it herself. Made the case for why I'd succeed, why the investment was sound. 3 weeks after our divorce was finalized, she was advocating for me to her billionaire husband. Damn. Yeah. Marcus accepted his beer from the bartender, took a long drink. I spent 7 years thinking she left because she didn't believe in me. Turns out she left because she believed in herself more. That's actually kind of beautiful. It's humiliating, but also, Marcus paused, searching for the word, clarifying. I've been chasing the wrong thing, trying to prove something to someone who didn't need proof. Building a life designed to make her regret leaving when she never regretted it in the first place. So what now? Now I do the work. Therapy. Actually figuring out what I want instead of what I think I should want. And Marcus met his friend's eyes. And I need to apologize to Sloane. Really apologize, not just damage control. She might not want to hear it. Probably not, but I owe it to her anyway. They drank in comfortable silence for a while, watching the game neither of them cared about. Around them, the bar filled with people unwinding after work, laughing and arguing and living their lives without cameras or audiences or viral videos. Can I ask you something? Jordan said eventually. Sure. Did you ever actually love Sloane, or was she just a trophy, a statement, proof of concept? Marcus smiled sadly. I cared about her, respected her, enjoyed being with her. But love? Real love. The kind that Lena has with Valenti, or that you have with Sarah? No, I don't think I did. I loved what being with her said about me, and that's not the same thing at all. You're being hard on yourself. I'm being honest, for maybe the first time in 7 years. Jordan raised his glass. To honesty, then, however brutal. Marcus clinked his beer against Jordan's. To honesty. They finished their drinks and ordered food, greasy burgers that reminded Marcus of his graduate school days, when this much food for this little money felt like a luxury. He told Jordan about the therapy appointment tomorrow, about the notebook full of confessions, about the strange sense of possibility that came from having nothing left to prove. The board's going to want an update eventually, Jordan said, about when you're coming back. Tell them I'm working on it. Tell them I'm taking the full 3 months and using it to sort myself out. They wanted stable leadership. Can't be stable if you're imploding. Fair point. Jordan wiped ketchup from his mouth. For what it's worth, I think you're doing the right thing. The Marcus I know. The one who built Halo Tech from nothing. He's still in there. You just need to find him again. Or maybe I need to become someone new entirely. Also acceptable. Marcus paid the tab over Jordan's protests, and they walked out into the mission night. The neighborhood was alive with people and music, and the kind of energy that had drawn Marcus to San Francisco in the first place. The city of reinvention, of second chances, of people who'd failed spectacularly and gotten back up anyway. Maybe there was room for one more comeback story. Thanks for being here, Marcus said as they reached Jordan's car. For not giving up on me when I was being an idiot. You're my friend, Jordan said simply. That's what friends do. Besides, I've seen you at your worst. This is maybe top 3, but not quite number 1. What was number 1? The time you tried to debug code for 72 hours straight and ended up crying in a Denny's at 4 in the morning because they were out of hash browns. Marcus laughed, really laughed, for the first time in weeks. I'd forgotten about that. I haven't. Sarah made me promise to never let you go more than 48 hours without sleep again. Jordan unlocked his car. Get some rest. Tomorrow's a big day. Marcus walked back to where he'd parked, through streets that were familiar but felt different somehow, like he was seeing them clearly for the first time in years. The murals on building walls, the corner stores, the people sitting on stoops and sharing stories. This was the city he'd moved to with big dreams and bigger fears. The city where he'd married Lena, lost Lena, built an empire to prove he didn't need her. The city where he'd destroyed his second marriage in the most public way possible. But it was also the city where he'd learned to code, where he'd founded Halo Tech, where he'd turned an idea into something real, where he could, maybe, learn to be a better version of himself. When Marcus got home, there was an email waiting from Sloane's lawyer. He read it with a sinking feeling, expecting more separation terms, maybe divorce papers. Instead, it was a personal message from Sloane herself. Marcus, I asked my lawyer to forward this because I'm still not ready to talk directly, but I wanted you to know that I don't hate you. I'm angry and hurt and humiliated, but I don't hate you. I think we both made a mistake. You married me trying to prove something to your ex-wife, and I married you trying to prove something to my parents. We used each other, and that's not fair to either of us. I need time to figure out who I am outside of being a Whitmore, outside of being your wife, outside of being the woman in that viral video. I think you need the same. So let's give each other that time. Maybe we'll find our way back to each other. Maybe we won't. Either way, I wish you well. You're not a bad person, Marcus. You're just a lost one. I hope you find what you're looking for. S. Marcus read it 3 times, feeling a complex mixture of sadness and relief and gratitude. Sloane was right about everything. They'd used each other, and now they were both paying the price. But at least they were being honest about it. He typed a reply. Sloane, thank you for this. You're right about all of it. I'm sorry for hurting you, for making you a supporting character in my drama, for not seeing you clearly enough to love you the way you deserved. You're an extraordinary person, and you deserve someone who can appreciate that without needing it to prove anything. I hope you find yourself. I hope you find happiness, and I hope someday you can forgive me, even if you can't forget. Take all the time you need. I'll be here if you want to talk, and I'll understand if you never do. Marcus. He hit send before he could second guess it, then closed his laptop and went to bed. For the first time in a week, Marcus slept through the night. Dr. Sarah Chen's office was nothing like Marcus expected. No leather couch, no framed degrees dominating the walls, no pretentious art that cost more than it was worth. Instead, it was a small, comfortable room in a Victorian building in the Castro, with plants on the windowsill and 2 chairs facing each other across a simple coffee table. Dr. Chen herself was younger than Marcus had imagined, maybe late 30s, wearing jeans and a cardigan that made her look more like a graduate student than a therapist who treated high-achieving executives. Mr. Hale, she said, gesturing to one of the chairs. Please sit. Can I get you water, tea? Water's fine, and call me Marcus. She poured him a glass from a pitcher on the side table, then settled into her own chair with a notepad that she didn't immediately open. Lena spoke very highly of you, Dr. Chen said. She said you were one of the smartest people she'd ever known, but also one of the most determined to sabotage your own happiness. Marcus laughed despite himself. That sounds like Lena, compliment and critique in the same breath. She also said you were finally ready to do the work. Are you? I don't know. Maybe. I destroyed my marriage at my own wedding reception in front of 200 people, and it became a viral video, so I figure I either do the work or I just lean into being a cautionary tale. Dr. Chen smiled. Well, at least you're honest about where you are. That's a good start. She picked up her notepad but still didn't write anything. Why don't you tell me what you think the problem is? In your own words. Marcus took a drink of water, buying time. I think I've spent my entire adult life trying to prove I'm worth something. And every time I achieve something that should make me feel worthy, it doesn't. So I chase the next thing, the next milestone, the next validation, and I hurt people along the way because they become means to an end instead of... He stopped, searching for words. Instead of actual people I care about. That's a very clinical self-assessment. I've had a week to think about it. But you've been living it for how long? Marcus considered. 7 years, actively. Maybe my whole life, if I'm being honest. Tell me about your childhood. And so Marcus did. He talked about growing up in a middle-class suburb of Phoenix, watching his father work 2 jobs to keep them afloat, his mother stretching every dollar until it screamed. About the rich kids at his high school who made him feel small and invisible. About the scholarship to Stanford that had felt like a lottery ticket out of mediocrity. He talked about the chip on his shoulder that had driven him through undergraduate and graduate programs, about the conviction that he had to be twice as good to get half as far, about meeting Lena and thinking she was his reward for all that hard work. That's an interesting word, Dr. Chen said. Reward, like she was a prize you won. I didn't mean it that way. Didn't you? You said yourself that you see people as symbols of your success or failure. Lena was the smart, beautiful woman who chose you when you had nothing. That validated you in a way achievement alone couldn't. Marcus felt the words land like punches. Yeah, I guess so. And when she left, it invalidated everything. If she couldn't see my potential, couldn't wait for me to succeed, then maybe I wasn't actually capable of succeeding. So I had to prove her wrong. Had to show her, had to show everyone that I could make it without her. And did you? No. The admission came easier than Marcus expected. Because even when I made it, even when Halo Tech got funded and grew and became worth billions, I still felt empty. Still felt like I was one mistake away from being that broke kid in Phoenix again. Dr. Chen nodded, finally writing something in her notepad. What you're describing is called external validation dependency. You've built your entire sense of self-worth on other people's perception of your success. So no achievement ever feels sufficient because you're not the one validating it. You're waiting for someone else, Lena, investors, the world, to tell you you're enough. So how do I fix it? That's the wrong question. The question isn't how do you fix it? The question is, are you willing to sit with the discomfort of not knowing if you're enough? Are you willing to build a sense of self that doesn't require constant external confirmation? Marcus thought about that. About the prospect of waking up every day without a goal to chase, without someone to impress, without a narrative of triumph to construct. It sounded terrifying. I don't know, he admitted. That's honest. And honesty is where we start. Dr. Chen set down her notepad. Here's what I'm going to recommend. Twice-a-week sessions for the next 3 months. And I want you to do something that's going to feel impossible for someone like you. What? Nothing. I want you to spend your leave of absence doing nothing productive. No coding, no networking, no business development, no proving yourself to anyone. Just exist. Read books that aren't about business. Take walks. Sit in coffee shops without your laptop. Learn what it feels like to be Marcus Hale without the armor of achievement. That sounds like hell. It probably will be at first, but that discomfort is where the growth happens. You can't build a healthier relationship with yourself while you're running away from yourself. Marcus left Dr. Chen's office feeling unsettled and exposed, like someone had peeled back his skin and looked at all the ugly machinery underneath. He walked to a nearby coffee shop, without his laptop as instructed, and sat by the window watching people pass. A young couple arguing about where to eat dinner, an elderly man feeding pigeons from a park bench, a woman in scrubs, probably just off a hospital shift, looking exhausted but content. Regular people living regular lives, not performing, not proving, just being. Marcus ordered a coffee and a pastry he didn't need and let himself do nothing. It felt wrong. His mind kept generating task lists, business ideas, things he should be working on. He pulled out his phone 3 times before forcing himself to put it away. By the time he'd finished his coffee, 45 minutes had passed, and Marcus couldn't have told you what he'd accomplished, which was, he supposed, the point. The weeks that followed fell into a rhythm that felt foreign and uncomfortable. Marcus woke without an alarm, made breakfast instead of grabbing something on the way to the office, and spent his mornings reading novels he'd been meaning to get to for years. He took long walks through neighborhoods he'd lived in but never really seen, stopped in bookstores and record shops, talked to strangers who had no idea who he was or what he'd accomplished. He saw Dr. Chen twice a week and slowly, painfully, began to excavate the foundation of his need for validation. They traced it back to childhood, to watching his father work himself into exhaustion for crumbs, to the toxic belief that worth was something you had to earn rather than something you inherently possessed. Your father worked 2 jobs, Dr. Chen said during one session. What did that teach you about value? That you have to sacrifice everything to matter. That rest is weakness. That if you're not constantly proving yourself, you're worthless. And when you met Lena, what role did she play in that narrative? Marcus had thought about this a lot. She was proof that I mattered even when I hadn't achieved anything yet. Her love was the validation I couldn't give myself. So when she left, she took the validation with her, and I spent 7 years trying to build it back through external success. What would it look like to validate yourself? The question stopped Marcus cold. He genuinely didn't know. He'd never tried. I have no idea, he admitted. Then maybe that's your homework. Figure out one thing about yourself that you value independent of achievement. One quality, one characteristic, one aspect of Marcus Hale that would still be true even if Halo Tech failed tomorrow. Marcus spent a week on that assignment and came up with nothing he believed. He was creative, but only in service of building products. He was determined, but determination without direction was just stubbornness. He was intelligent, but intelligence that didn't produce results felt pointless. I can't do it, he told Dr. Chen. Everything I value about myself is tied to what I can achieve. That's because you've never practiced valuing yourself any other way. It's a muscle you haven't built. She leaned forward. Here's a different question. What do you enjoy? Not what makes you successful or impressive. What brings you actual joy? Marcus thought about it, really thought. I used to like hiking, before I got too busy. There was something about being in nature, solving the puzzle of the trail, pushing my body. I haven't done it in years. Why not? Because it doesn't produce anything. It's just walking in circles. Marcus, that's exactly why you should do it. Start this weekend. Find a trail. Leave your phone in the car. Just walk. So Marcus did. He drove to Mount Tamalpais early Saturday morning, parked at the trailhead, and started climbing. The first mile was torture. His mind screamed that this was a waste of time, that he should be networking or coding or doing something productive. His legs, unused to real exercise, burned and protested. But somewhere around mile 3, something shifted. His breathing found a rhythm. His thoughts quieted. The view from the ridge opened up. San Francisco Bay spread out below, the Golden Gate Bridge in the distance, the Pacific beyond. And for a few minutes, Marcus just stood there and felt something he hadn't felt in years. Peace. Not accomplishment, not validation, just the simple satisfaction of being alive in his body, in this moment, without needing it to mean anything larger. He hiked for 4 hours and returned to his car exhausted, dirty, and strangely content. No one knew he'd been there. No one would congratulate him. There was no metric for success, no way to quantify the experience, and somehow that made it perfect. Marcus started hiking every weekend. He joined a local trail group and met people who didn't know or care that he'd founded a billion-dollar company. They just wanted to talk about gear and weather patterns and the best places to see wildflowers. It was refreshing in a way Marcus couldn't quite articulate. One of the regular hikers, a retired teacher named Robert, asked Marcus what he did for work. I'm in tech, Marcus said, which was his standard deflection. Aren't we all, in this city? Robert laughed. What are you working on? Actually, I'm on leave, taking some time to figure things out. Good for you. Too many people burn themselves out chasing the next promotion, the next big exit. Life's too short to spend it proving yourself to people who don't matter. Marcus thought about that on the drive home. People who don't matter. He'd spent 7 years trying to prove himself to Lena, who'd moved on and built a beautiful life. Spent months trying to impress Sloan, who'd seen through him eventually. Spent his entire adult life performing for an audience that largely didn't care. What would it look like to live for himself instead? 2 months into his leave of absence, Marcus received an email from an unexpected source. The subject line read simply, "Lunch?" The sender was Nico Valenti. Marcus stared at the email for a full minute before opening it. The message was brief and direct, like everything about Valenti seemed to be. Marcus, I'm in the city next Thursday. I'd like to buy you lunch and discuss a business matter. Are you available? NV? Marcus's first instinct was to decline. What could Valenti possibly want to discuss? But curiosity won out. I'm available, he typed back. Where and when? Valenti's reply came within minutes, naming a restaurant in North Beach that Marcus recognized as one of the most exclusive Italian places in the city. The kind where you needed reservations 6 months in advance and connections to get past the waiting list. Of course, Valenti could get a table. Thursday arrived cold and drizzly, typical San Francisco winter. Marcus dressed carefully, nice but not too formal, successful but not trying too hard, and arrived at the restaurant 5 minutes early. Valenti was already there, seated at a corner table with a view of the street, reading something on his phone with the focus of a man who didn't tolerate distraction. He looked up as Marcus approached, stood, offered his hand. Thank you for coming, Valenti said. His accent was more pronounced in person, his handshake firm. Please, sit. They ordered, Valenti in fluid Italian that made the waiter beam, Marcus stumbling through basic pasta choices, and then Valenti got directly to business. I wanted to talk to you about Halo Tech, he said. Specifically, about its future. Marcus's stomach tightened. Are you pulling your investment? No, quite the opposite. Valenti set down his wine glass. Meridian Holdings currently owns 8% of your company. I'm considering increasing that position significantly. How significantly? Enough to give us majority control, 51%. The number hit Marcus like a physical blow. Majority control meant Valenti Capital would own Halo Tech, would control the board, could replace Marcus as CEO if they wanted. Why? Marcus managed. Because the company has good bones but weak leadership. The technology is sound, the market position is strong, but the founder, Valenti paused, choosing his words. The founder has been more interested in proving himself than building something sustainable. Marcus felt anger flare. That's true, and you know it. Valenti's expression wasn't unkind, just matter of fact. You built Halo Tech to show your ex-wife that she was wrong about you. That's a terrible reason to build a company, Marcus. It's also why you've made increasingly risky decisions over the past 2 years. You're chasing validation, not value. Lena told you that. Lena told me many things, but I also have eyes. I've been watching Halo Tech's trajectory, and I see a talented founder who's letting his personal issues compromise his judgment. Valenti leaned forward. So here's what I'm proposing. Meridian acquires majority control. You remain as CEO, but with oversight. Real oversight, not the rubber stamp board you have now. We bring in experienced operators to strengthen the executive team. We refocus the company on sustainable growth instead of flashy headlines. And if I say no, then we maintain our current position and watch the company slowly decline as you continue making decisions based on ego instead of strategy. Eventually, another investor will make a move, or you'll run the company into the ground. Either way, our investment will lose value, which I prefer to avoid. Marcus wanted to argue, to defend himself, to tell Valenti he was wrong. But he couldn't, because everything Valenti was saying was true. Why not just fire me? Marcus asked. If you think I'm such a liability, why keep me as CEO? Because despite your personal issues, you're brilliant. The core vision for Halo Tech was yours, and it's good. You just need to stop treating it like a monument to your worth and start treating it like a business. Valenti signaled the waiter for more wine. Their food arrived, perfect pasta, probably handmade that morning. They ate in silence for a moment. Lena said you're in therapy, Valenti said finally. She told you that? We're married? We tell each other things? Valenti's expression softened slightly. She also said you're making progress, that you're finally doing the work of figuring out who you are beyond your achievements. I'm trying. Good, because here's the truth, Marcus. If you want to keep building companies, you need to learn to separate your identity from your success. Otherwise, every setback will feel like death, and every victory will feel hollow. It's a miserable way to live. Trust me. I know. Marcus looked up, surprised. You? I built my first company when I was 26, sold it for $8 million and felt like a king. Built my second, sold it for $80 million and felt exactly the same. Built my third, took it public, became a billionaire, and still felt empty. Valenti's smile was rueful. It wasn't until I met Lena that I understood. I was chasing numbers because I didn't know how to value myself. She taught me that success is just a tool. What matters is what you do with it. What did you do with it? I started investing in people instead of just companies. Started building things that mattered instead of things that impressed. Started measuring my life by the relationships I built instead of the money I made. Valenti gestured with his fork, and I became happy. Genuinely happy for the first time in my adult life. Marcus thought about Lena at the wedding, radiant and confident, laughing at something Valenti whispered. Thought about the way they moved together, the easy intimacy of two people who'd done the work of actually knowing each other. I don't know if I can do that, Marcus admitted. Then you'll stay miserable, and you'll keep hurting people who get close to you. Is that what you want? No. Then say yes to the deal. Let us help you build Halo Tech into something real. And in the meantime, keep doing your therapy, keep figuring yourself out, and maybe you'll become the kind of leader the company actually needs. Marcus pushed his pasta around his plate. And if I can't, if I do the work and I'm still not good enough, then we'll part ways amicably. I'll recommend you for board positions, write you stellar references, and help you land on your feet. But Marcus, Valenti met his eyes. I don't think that's what will happen. Lena believes in you. She always has, and I've learned to trust her judgment about people. Even though I destroyed my marriage at my wedding reception? Especially because of that, you hit bottom publicly, completely, in a way that makes hiding impossible. That's either going to break you or transform you. Lena thinks it'll be the latter. I'm willing to bet on that. Marcus thought about the past 2 months, about hiking trails and therapy sessions and learning to sit with himself without accomplishment as armor, about the small, fragile sense of peace he was building. I need to think about it, he said. Of course. Take your time. Send me your answer by the end of next week. Valenti pulled out his wallet, placed a black credit card on the table. And Marcus, this isn't a hostile takeover. This is an intervention. We're trying to save you from yourself. They finished lunch talking about other things, the city, the tech industry, books they'd both read. Valenti was surprisingly easy to talk to when business was off the table, witty and well-read and genuinely interested in Marcus's thoughts on various topics. When they parted on the street outside the restaurant, Valenti shook Marcus's hand again. Lena told me to tell you something, he said. She said to remind you that talent is never the question. The question is what you do with it. She hopes you'll choose wisely. Marcus walked back to his car in the drizzle, Valenti's offer echoing in his mind. Majority control. Oversight. Admitting that he couldn't do it alone, that his way hadn't been working, that he needed help. It felt like surrender, or maybe it felt like growth. That evening, Marcus met Jordan for dinner at their usual dive bar. He laid out Valenti's offer over burgers and beer. Wow, Jordan said when Marcus finished. That's actually generous, considering what he could do. Is it? It feels like he's taking my company away. He's not taking it away. He's making you a partner instead of a dictator. There's a difference. Jordan took a long drink of his beer. Be honest. Do you trust yourself to run Halo Tech right now? I don't know. 2 months ago, I would have said yes without hesitation. Now, Marcus shrugged. Now, I'm not sure I trust my own judgment about anything. That's actually progress. The Marcus from 2 months ago thought he had all the answers and destroyed his marriage to prove it. This Marcus knows what he doesn't know. So you think I should take the deal? I think you should do what's best for the company. And right now, that probably means accepting help from people who've built sustainable success instead of just impressive headlines. Marcus thought about that, about the difference between success that looked good and success that felt good, between building something to prove a point and building something that mattered. If I say yes, he said slowly, everything changes. I'm not the founder who did it his way. I'm the guy who needed a billionaire to bail him out. Or, Jordan countered, you're the guy who was smart enough to recognize his limitations and humble enough to accept help. Which version do you want to be? Marcus didn't have an answer. He spent the weekend hiking and thinking, letting the question turn over in his mind. He thought about Lena's investment memo, about her belief in his talent separate from her belief in their marriage. Thought about Valenti offering him oversight instead of outright firing. Thought about Dr. Chen asking him what he valued about himself beyond achievement. And he thought about Sloane's email, about her hope that he'd find what he was looking for. What was he looking for? 7 years ago, he'd thought it was vindication, proof that Lena was wrong to leave. But she hadn't been wrong. She'd been right to save herself. And her leaving had led to everything good in both their lives. So what did Marcus actually want? He sat with the question through Sunday, through Monday, through a therapy session where Dr. Chen helped him excavate his fear of accepting help, his equation of independence with worth. Needing people doesn't make you weak, she said. It makes you human. The strongest people I know are the ones who've learned to be vulnerable, to ask for help, to admit when they're wrong. I don't know how to be that person. Then learn. You learn to code, to pitch investors, to build a company. You can learn to be honest about your limitations. On Tuesday, Marcus sent an email to Nico Valenti. I accept your offer. Let's talk terms. The response came within an hour. Excellent. My lawyers will send over the paperwork. And Marcus, welcome to the next chapter. Make it count. The deal took 6 weeks to finalize. Meridian Holdings acquired 51% of Halotech in a transaction that barely made the business news. Valenti's team was expert at keeping things quiet. The board was reconstituted with 3 new members, all of them experienced operators from successful tech companies. Jordan was promoted to president, taking operational control while Marcus remained CEO, focused on vision and product strategy. It felt strange, giving up control. Strange, but also, surprisingly, relieving. Marcus no longer had to make every decision, carry every burden, be right about everything. He could focus on what he was actually good at: the technology, the user experience, the big picture vision, while more experienced people handled the parts he'd been faking his way through. The first board meeting under the new structure was humbling. The new board members asked hard questions Marcus didn't have good answers for. They pushed back on strategies he'd thought were brilliant. They demanded data he hadn't bothered to collect. But they also listened. When Marcus laid out his vision for the next generation collaboration tools, they engaged seriously, asked thoughtful questions, offered suggestions that actually improved the ideas. For the first time in years, Marcus felt like he was part of a team instead of a one-man show. His therapy continued twice a week. Dr. Chen helped him work through the shame of the viral video, the grief of his failed marriage, the complicated feelings about Lena that he'd been avoiding for 7 years. "Do you still love her?" Dr. Chen asked one session. Marcus thought about it honestly. "No, I love who she was when we were together. I love the idea of her, the role she played in my story. But the actual Lena, the one who's married to Valenti and running charitable foundations, I don't really know her, and I don't think I'm capable of loving someone I don't know." "That's very insightful." "I'm learning." Marcus smiled sadly. "Slowly, painfully, but learning." "What about Sloane?" "I hurt her badly. I don't think there's any coming back from that." Marcus had been following Sloane on social media from a distance. She'd gone to Europe, was posting photos from Paris and Rome and Barcelona, and she looked happy, or at least free. "I hope she finds someone who can actually see her, who loves her for who she is, not what being with her represents." "Do you think you'll ever be capable of that? Loving someone for who they are?" "I don't know. Maybe. If I can figure out how to love myself first." 4 months after the wedding disaster, Marcus received an envelope via courier. Inside was a single piece of paper, divorce papers from Sloane, requesting an uncontested dissolution on grounds of irreconcilable differences. No demands for money, no custody battles over possessions, just a clean break. Marcus signed them without hesitation and sent them back with a note. "Thank you for giving me the gift of honesty. I hope Europe is everything you need it to be. You deserve the world. M." The divorce was finalized 6 weeks later. Marcus was single again, though he'd barely felt married in the first place. 6 months into his therapy, Dr. Chen gave Marcus a new assignment. "I want you to write a letter to Lena, not to send, just to write. Tell her everything you wish you'd said when you were married, everything you understand now that you didn't then." Marcus spent a week on the letter. He wrote about their early days, about falling in love with her intelligence and her directness, about how he'd taken her for granted, turned her into his emotional support instead of his partner, about how leaving him had been the kindest thing she could have done, even though it hadn't felt kind at the time. He wrote about the wedding, about inviting her to humiliate her and ending up humiliating himself, about finally understanding that she'd never needed to be proven wrong, she'd just needed to be free. And he wrote about gratitude, for the investment that had helped Halotech succeed, for the truth she'd spoken at the reception, for showing him what real partnership looked like, even if he'd learned the lesson through watching her with someone else. When he finished, the letter was 12 pages long. Marcus read it through once, then put it in a drawer. Dr. Chen was right. He didn't need to send it. Writing it had been the point. 8 months after the wedding, Marcus received a text from an unknown number. "Hi Marcus, this is Lena. I heard about the Valenti Capital deal. Congratulations on making a smart choice. I'm proud of you. I hope you're well. L." Marcus stared at the message for a long time before responding. "Thank you for the message and for everything else. You were right about all of it. I'm working on being someone worth being proud of. Hope you and Nico are well. M." Her response came a few minutes later. "We are. He says hello. He also says you're doing good work at Halo Tech. Keep it up. And that was it. No drama, no subtext, just two people who'd once meant everything to each other, checking in with kindness and distance. It felt like closure. 9 months after the wedding, Halo Tech released its biggest product update in 3 years. The new collaboration tools were genuinely innovative, solving real problems instead of chasing buzzwords. The tech press loved it. Users loved it. The company's valuation increased by 30%. At the launch party, Jordan pulled Marcus aside. "You did it," Jordan said. "You actually did it. Built something that matters instead of just building something that looks impressive." Marcus looked around the party. Employees celebrating, investors satisfied, users excited about the product. It felt good. Really good. But it also felt different than he'd expected. Less like vindication, more like satisfaction. Less like proving something, more like creating something. "We did it," Marcus corrected. "I couldn't have done this alone. That's what I'm finally learning." "Look at you, being emotionally mature. Dr. Chen would be so proud." Marcus laughed. "She'd say I still have a long way to go. But yeah, progress." What? 1 year after the wedding, Marcus was hiking Mount Tamalpais when he got a call from an unknown number. He almost didn't answer. He'd learned to value his off-screen time, but something made him pick up. "Mr. Hale, this is Patricia Whitmore." Marcus stopped mid-trail. Sloane's mother. "Mrs. Whitmore, hello. I'm calling because Sloane asked me to reach out. She's back in San Francisco, and she'd like to meet with you. Just coffee, nothing formal. She says she has some things she'd like to say." Marcus's first instinct was panic. "Is she okay?" "She's wonderful, actually. Europe was very good for her. She's thinking more clearly than I've seen in years." Patricia paused. "I know I was harsh with you after the wedding, but I want you to know what you've done this past year, the work you've put in. Sloane's been following from a distance, and she's impressed. We all are." "Thank you. That means a lot. So will you meet with her?" Marcus thought about Dr. Chen's advice about sitting with discomfort, about being honest even when it was hard. "Yes," he said. "Tell her I'll meet her anywhere, anytime." They met at a coffee shop in the Marina, neutral territory, on a Saturday afternoon. Marcus arrived early, nervous in a way he hadn't been in months. He'd faced board meetings and investor pitches and difficult therapy sessions, but somehow this felt harder. Sloane walked in exactly on time, and Marcus's breath caught. She looked different. Her hair was shorter, sun-streaked from Mediterranean beaches. She wore jeans and a simple sweater instead of designer clothes. She looked relaxed, happy, free. "Hi," she said, sliding into the chair across from him. "Hi. You look great." "So do you. Healthier. Less haunted." She ordered a latte from the passing barista, then turned her full attention to Marcus. "Thank you for agreeing to meet." "Of course. I owe you so many apologies." "Stop." She held up a hand. "I didn't ask you here for more apologies. I've read your emails, all of them. I know you're sorry. I know you've been doing the work. I follow Halo Tech's progress. I see what you're building." "Then why?" Sloane took a breath. "Because I wanted to tell you that I forgive you. Really, truly forgive you. What happened at the wedding was awful and humiliating, and it broke something in me. But it also freed me, forced me to ask myself who I was beyond being a Whitmore, beyond being your wife, beyond being the woman in that video." "And who are you?" "I'm still figuring it out, but I'm enjoying the process. I spent 6 months in Europe just existing. No goals, no plans, no pressure. I read books and took cooking classes and had affairs with completely inappropriate men." She laughed. "It was wonderful." Marcus smiled despite himself. "Good for you. The point is, I was using you as much as you were using me. I wanted to prove to my parents that I could find someone successful on my own merits. I wanted a husband who would be a partner in building something, not just managing the family money. And you checked those boxes. But you didn't actually love me. No, I cared about you, admired you, enjoyed being with you. But love? Real, deep, I can't imagine my life without you, love? No. And you didn't love me either. We were both performing for an audience. The truth of it settled between them. Marcus felt sad, but also relieved. They were finally being honest. "So where do you go from here?" he asked. "I'm starting a venture fund, focused on women-led companies in developing markets, using my family's money to actually do something meaningful instead of just maintaining wealth." Sloane's eyes were bright with excitement. "And I'm seeing someone, a documentary filmmaker. He's broke and passionate and completely unimpressive on paper, and I'm crazy about him." "That's wonderful, really. What about you? Anyone special?" Marcus shook his head. "Not yet. I'm still working on being someone worth dating, learning to value myself, to be honest, to show up as an actual partner instead of a project. It's slow going." "But you're doing it. That's what matters." Sloane reached across the table, squeezed his hand briefly. "Thank you for letting me go, for signing the papers without a fight, for making it easy. It was the least I could do." They finished their coffee, talking about lighter things: Sloane's travels, Marcus's hiking hobby, mutual friends from the wedding who'd been scandalized and then moved on. When they parted on the street outside, Sloane hugged him. "I hope you find what you're looking for," she said. "I hope you keep finding yourself." Marcus watched her walk away, then headed for his car. He felt lighter than he had in months, like the last piece of his old life had finally been properly put to rest. 18 months after the wedding, Halo Tech crossed a major milestone: $1 billion in revenue. The company was solidly profitable, growing sustainably, and positioned for long-term success. The board threw a celebration at a rooftop bar downtown, and Marcus gave a speech thanking the team, the investors, everyone who'd helped build something real. Afterward, alone on the balcony watching the city lights, Marcus got a text. It was from Lena. "Saw the news. Congratulations, you've built something remarkable. Nico and I are hosting a small dinner next week to celebrate some of our portfolio companies' successes. Would you like to join us? No pressure, just good food and conversation. L." Marcus read the message 3 times. An invitation to the Valenti penthouse, to break bread with Lena and her husband, to celebrate success without needing it to prove anything. He typed back, "I'd be honored. Thank you for the invitation." The dinner was intimate, just 12 people, all of them founders or operators from Valenti Capital's portfolio. The conversation was smart and challenging and completely devoid of the usual tech industry peacocking. People talked about failures as openly as successes, about lessons learned and mistakes made. Lena and Nico hosted with easy grace, moving through the room, making connections, ensuring everyone felt included. Marcus watched them work together, the small signals they sent each other, the way they divided responsibilities without needing to discuss it, the obvious affection underneath the professional partnership. This was what he'd been chasing without knowing it. Not validation, not vindication, partnership. The kind where both people were whole on their own and chose to build something together anyway. At one point, Lena found Marcus on the terrace again, looking out at the same view he'd seen during their difficult conversation 18 months ago. "Feels like déjà vu," she said, joining him at the railing. "Hopefully with a better outcome this time." She laughed. "You're doing well, Marcus, really well. I've been watching Halo Tech's progress, and I'm genuinely impressed with how you've matured as a leader. I had good teachers and good investors who forced me to grow up. Nico told me about your board meetings. He says you've learned to listen. I'm trying. Turns out I don't actually have all the answers, and admitting that makes everything easier." They stood in comfortable silence for a moment. Then Lena said, "I got a letter from Sloane. She said you two had coffee, that it went well." "It did. She's thriving. I'm happy for her." "She said the same about you." Lena turned to face him. "I'm proud of you, Marcus, for doing the work, for not giving up when it got hard, for becoming someone who can actually build something sustainable instead of just impressive. I couldn't have done it without you. The investment, the truth you told at the wedding, the grace you showed even when I didn't deserve it. You saved me from myself." "No. You saved yourself," I just held up a mirror. Lena smiled. "But I'm glad I could help." Nico appeared in the doorway. "Lena, they're asking about the Foundation's new scholarship program." "Be right there." She squeezed Marcus's arm. "Come inside. There's someone I want you to meet, another founder who's struggling with the same issues you were. Maybe you can share some wisdom." Marcus followed her back into the warmth and light and conversation. And for the first time in his adult life, he felt like he belonged somewhere, not because of what he'd achieved, but because of who he was becoming. 6 months later, Marcus stood in front of a different kind of crowd. a university auditorium filled with graduate students studying entrepreneurship. He'd been invited to give a guest lecture on building sustainable companies, and he'd debated whether to accept. Dr. Chen had encouraged him to say yes. It's time to share what you've learned, not as performance, but as genuine service. So Marcus stood at the podium and told his story. Not the sanitized version, not the highlight reel. The real story. The failed marriage, the viral video, the forced leave of absence, the therapy, the slow rebuild, the mistakes and the lessons, and the ongoing work of becoming someone who could lead without needing constant validation. The students were riveted. During the Q&A, one young woman raised her hand. How do you know when you've made it? When you're finally successful enough? Marcus smiled. That's the wrong question. Success isn't a destination you arrive at. It's a practice. The question isn't, when will I be enough? The question is, am I showing up today with honesty, integrity, and the willingness to grow? If you can answer yes to that, you're already successful. Everything else is just details. After the lecture, several students approached him for advice. Marcus stayed late, talking through their questions, offering guidance without pretending to have all the answers. It felt good, meaningful, like he was finally using his experience to help others instead of just to prove himself. On his way out, Marcus checked his phone. A text from Jordan. Board wants to talk to you about the CEO role. Thinking about making it permanent without the oversight. Interested? Marcus stopped in the hallway. A year ago, he would have jumped at this, would have seen it as vindication, as proof that he'd earned back what he'd lost. Now he just felt curious. Did he want to be CEO long-term? Did that serve him, serve the company, serve the life he was trying to build? He typed back. Let's talk about it. But no rush. Want to make sure it's the right decision for everyone. 3 years after the wedding, Marcus sat in his therapist's office for what Dr. Chen said might be one of their last regular sessions. You've done remarkable work, she said. You've built genuine self-worth, learned to form healthy relationships, and found purpose beyond achievement. I think you're ready to continue this journey on your own, with check-ins as needed. Marcus felt a swell of emotion. Thank you for everything. For not giving up on me when I was a mess. You were never a mess. You were just someone who needed to learn a different way of being, and you did the work. That's all you. Marcus left her office and walked through the city he'd called home for over a decade. He thought about everything that had changed, the companies he'd built, the relationships he'd destroyed and rebuilt, the person he'd become. He pulled out his phone and scrolled to a contact he hadn't used in months. Hit dial. Marcus? Lena's voice was surprised but warm. Is everything okay? Everything's fine. I wanted to say thank you for believing in me even when I didn't deserve it, for investing in Halo Tech when you could have walked away completely, for showing me what real partnership looks like, even if I had to learn it by watching you with someone else. Marcus, let me finish. I spent years being angry at you for leaving, then years trying to prove you wrong, and finally I understand. You didn't leave because you didn't believe in me. You left because you believed in yourself more. And that was the right choice, the brave choice, the choice that saved both of us. There was silence on the other end. Then quietly, thank you for understanding that. It means more than you know. I'm thinking about stepping down as CEO, transitioning to Chief Product Officer, letting someone with better operational skills run the company day to day. How do you feel about that? Marcus smiled. Relieved, excited, like I'm finally making a decision based on what's right instead of what looks impressive. Then I think it's a brilliant choice. And Marcus, I'm really proud of how far you've come. Me too, finally. They talked for a few more minutes about nothing important, the weather, upcoming tech conferences, mutual acquaintances. Then Lena had to go, and they hung up with genuine warmth. Marcus pocketed his phone and kept walking. He passed his old apartment building, the one he'd shared with Lena a lifetime ago. It looked smaller than he remembered, less significant. Just a building where two young people had tried and failed to build a life together. But from that failure had come everything good. Lena's happiness with Valenti, Marcus's growth into someone capable of genuine partnership, Halo Tech's transformation from a vanity project into something that actually mattered. Sometimes the best thing that could happen was falling apart completely. Sometimes you had to lose everything to find out what was actually worth keeping. Marcus's phone buzzed, an email notification. The board had sent over the formal offer: chief product officer, generous compensation, real work-life balance built into the role. A position that valued his strengths without requiring him to be everything to everyone. He read it through once, then forwarded it to his lawyer with a note. Let's make this happen. Then Marcus did something he never would have done 3 years ago. He turned off his phone, dropped it in his bag, and just walked. No destination, no purpose, no metric for success. Just a man walking through his city on a beautiful afternoon, content with who he was and where he'd been. Content with the journey still ahead. The sun was setting over San Francisco Bay, painting the sky in shades of gold and amber. Marcus stopped at a viewpoint overlooking the water and watched the light change. He thought about all the people who'd shaped him: Lena and Nico, Sloan and Jordan, Dr. Chen, and countless others. People who'd challenged him, supported him, and refused to let him hide from the truth. And he thought about the letter he'd written and never sent, sitting in a drawer in his penthouse. Maybe someday he'd share it with Lena. Maybe he wouldn't. Either way, writing it had changed him. Marcus pulled out his notebook, the same one he'd filled with confessions 3 years ago, and started a new entry. Today I learned that success isn't about proving you were right. It's about admitting you were wrong and growing anyway. Today I learned that the best partnerships are built on mutual respect, not mutual need. Today I learned that the person I was trying to become was just a better version of who I already was, and that was enough all along. He closed the notebook and watched the sun sink below the horizon, washing the city in twilight. Somewhere out there, Lena and Nico were probably having dinner, talking about their day, building the life they'd chosen together. Somewhere out there, Sloan was probably filming a documentary or planning her next adventure with her filmmaker boyfriend. Somewhere out there, Jordan and Sarah were probably planning their wedding, doing it right this time. And here, on this viewpoint, Marcus was finally at peace. Not because he'd achieved enough or proven enough or impressed enough people, but because he'd learned to validate himself. The journey wasn't over. There would be more challenges, more growth, more lessons to learn. But for the first time in his life, Marcus was okay with that. He didn't need to have it all figured out. He just needed to keep showing up, keep being honest, keep doing the